Chapter 365. Are you feeling unwell? Let's go home. Looking at Selena Gomez's dazed eyes, Perwalton couldn't help but smile. After waiting for so long, it was finally time to reap the rewards. She believed that Selena Gomez would definitely fall in love with her. After all, she was mesmerized by the beauty in the mirror. No, thank you, I need to go to the bathroom. Feeling Perwalton's burning gaze, Selena Gomez couldn't help but stand up immediately. She didn't understand what was going on, and now she just wanted to leave this place as soon as possible. Because she didn't know when the drug would take effect. If she didn't leave by then, she would really fall into her hands. Then I'll go with you. Seeing that Selena could still stand up, Perwalton also stood up with a smile. It seemed that these girls who practiced dancing and singing were indeed in good physical condition. Even after being hit by a pill, they still didn't fall. Amazing. No need. Shaking her head, Selena Gomez quickly walked to the bathroom. We're all women, don't worry about it. We should help each other. However, Perwalton didn't give up so easily. After standing up, she forced herself to follow Selena to the bathroom. Fortunately, Selena's consciousness was still intact. When she entered the bathroom door, she locked it. Seeing that Selena locked the door, Perwalton couldn't help but raise her hand and put it down again. If she were to break down the door here, it would easily attract attention. By then, not only would Selena's reputation be ruined, her own reputation would also be affected. After all, to a certain extent, she was not only representing herself, but also the family behind her. So she just stopped here, but she gave her 4 bodyguards a look. 2 of them quickly left this place to prevent Selena from escaping, but sometimes she couldn't prevent it. After entering the bathroom, Selena Gomez ran directly to the sink, turned on the tap, and began to dig her throat, trying to spit out what she drank. Indeed, she spat it out, but this drug was instantaneous. This kind of drug was not too rare in the upper class of the United States, and it was extremely expensive. The main ingredient of this drug was blood orchid, a plant only produced on Kalimantan Island. After a man ate it, his combat power would double. After a woman ate it, she would also fall into a state of madness. It was a prop for many rich people to arouse their interest. Of course, the price was also very high. 1 blood orchid cost $1.5 million. Although Selena Gomez spat out most of the Long Island iced tea, her stomach still absorbed part of it. Just this part alone was enough. Leaning on the sink, Selena Gomez felt her head getting dizzier, and her body getting hotter and hotter. She gritted her teeth and saw a row of small windows on the wall behind the bathroom that served as ventilation. She had practiced dancing for many years, and with her slender body, she could barely squeeze through. Thinking of this, she put her head under the tap and kept washing it. The cold water poured on her head, and her consciousness temporarily returned to her body. Then, taking advantage of her sobriety, she climbed to the row of windows in a few steps, ignoring the startled mandarin ducks around her. He stretched his head and squeezed his body out of the small window with great effort. Selena, Selena, are you okay? Hearing the rustling sound inside, Perwalton, who had been listening outside, was a little anxious. He couldn't help but knock on the door and ask inside. But after waiting for a while, no sound came back. So, Perwalton was also a little anxious. He gave a look to his men. Then, one of his bodyguards had already taken the key from the staff here, and directly opened the door of the bathroom. Just as the door opened, Perwalton happened to see Selena Gomez jump out of the window. Who is it? Go after her. Seeing the duck in his hand fly away, Perwalton couldn't just let it go. After speaking to the 2 bodyguards behind him, these people quickly chased out. At the same time, they informed the 2 bodyguards outside to go around the back alley at the first time. At this time, when Selena Gomez fell from the window, she just happened to fall on a car parked here. With a bang, the pair of wild mandarin ducks in the car were shocked. Then the man immediately put on his clothes and pants. Fortunately, it was late spring, so the temperature here wasn't low. He only had a jacket and a pair of pants. If it was winter, it would be troublesome. After putting on his clothes, the man ran out immediately. When he saw someone fall on the roof of his car, he couldn't help but curse. Oh, who is it? F***CK, son of a bitch, do you want to die? My car. I'm sorry. At this time, Selena Gomez was not in the mood to care about his problem. She jumped out of the car awkwardly. After saying that, she wanted to leave, but she was caught by the man. You want to leave with just an apology? You think too highly of yourself. If you don't pay for my car today, don't think about leaving. Pulling Selena Gomez's arm, the man shouted loudly. Under his pull, her wet hair was thrown to the side, and her face appeared in front of him. Selena Gomez. Although she was not a top superstar, her relationship with Justin Bieber was quite popular in the United States and Canada. Most Americans actually knew her face. They might not have listened to her music, but they were familiar with her face. Obviously, this man also recognized her. Hey, if you don't want to pay for my car, then accompany me for a night. I'll pay for the fare. Looking at the delicate little face in front of him, the man said a little obscenely. Then, he wanted to take Selena Gomez into the car, but Selena Gomez would not let him do as he wished. She used all her strength in her high heels and stepped heavily on the man's foot, who did not have time to put on his shoes. The instant pain in his foot forced the man to let go of her. She also took this opportunity to run forward awkwardly, but unfortunately, she really did not have the strength. Although the kick was painful, it did not make the man give up. After screaming in pain twice, he limped after her. Now, he was angry and anxious, but compared to playing with Selena in a while, these were not a problem. Feeling that the man behind her was chasing her again, Selena wanted to run faster, but she really could not speed up. In the end, in a hurry, her foot slipped and she fell again, but this time, she was lucky to fall on the front cover of a car. With a bang, it also startled the 3 people in the back of the car. When the 3 of them were startled and got up to look, the man among the 3 of them recognized the person lying on the cover of the car at a glance. Selena Gomez? The man could be said to be very familiar with this woman, because this man was none other than Zhang Hai. After Zhang Hai brought the 2 girls out, he started in his car. With Zhang Hai's strong fighting power, the time naturally would not be short, especially when he was facing attacks from 2 sides at the same time. It was precisely because he did not leave that Zhang Hai was able to catch up. He and Selena Gomez could be said to be friends. Not only had she been to Zhang Hai's manor to play, but Zhang Hai had always remembered that she had helped him at the New York beef show. Zhang Hai was a person who knew how to repay kindness, so he immediately put on his clothes and got out of the car. As soon as he got out of the car, he saw a man limping over to Selena Gomez. This has nothing to do with you. Get lost. Stupid bitch. How dare you step on me? When the man came over, he shouted at Zhang Hai, and then grabbed Selena's hair, wanting to drag her away. What a joke. You want to touch his friend in front of Zhang Hai. At that moment, Zhang Hai did not say anything and kicked him. The man did not expect Zhang Hai to be so fast and start the fight without saying a word. This gave him no time to react, and he was kicked in the chest by Zhang Hai. The man flew for about 5 meters in the air before landing on another car. This time, he fell much harder than when Selena stepped on his car. The entire rear windshield was shattered, and the man and woman who were fighting inside were shocked. The man immediately put on his clothes and ran out to see what was going on. At this time, Zhang Hai had already arrived in front of Selena and helped her up. What's going on? Looking at Selena Gomez, who seemed to be drunk, but there was no smell of alcohol on her body, Zhang Hai was a little confused. He looked at her with a puzzled face and asked. Hearing Zhang Hai's voice, Selena Gomez also woke up a little. When she saw that it was Zhang Hai, she couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief and said intermittently, "Hurry, let's go." After that, her head tilted. Although she didn't faint, she had no strength to run or speak. Seeing this scene, Zhang Hai frowned, then put her in the back seat, said to the 2 girls to take care of her, and then was ready to leave. But before he left, 2 men in black chased after him. Zhang Hai remembered these 2 men. They were Walton's bodyguards. These 2 men were ordered to bring Selena Gomez back, but they just saw Zhang Hai carrying her into the car, which made them very unhappy. Now seeing that Zhang Hai was about to drive away, the 2 men here looked at each other, and one of them kicked him without saying a word. Chapter 366. It was dark now, and it was very late. This was a place for guests who wanted to have fun. Therefore, there were no street lights here. The 2 bodyguards didn't know who Zhang Hai was, and Zhang Hai didn't know who they were either. Now, Zhang Hai just regarded them as people who came to steal Selena Gomez. In fact, They regarded Zhang Hai as someone who came to pick up the leftovers. There was nothing to say between the two sides. Let's fight. Although it was very dark now, Zhang Hai wasn't joking. He naturally felt the wind behind his head. He didn't even close the door. He directly turned around and kicked the bodyguard's leg heavily. When the two legs collided, the huge impact caused the bodyguard who was sneak attacking from behind to be unable to help but throw his leg back. He almost fell down. Although the bodyguards of Pro Walton were all experienced, in terms of skills, perhaps Bell wasn't as good as these people. After all, these people also retired from the world's top forces. Some were not even national organizations, but mercenaries. There were more opportunities to fight between life and death. Therefore, their combat effectiveness was also stronger. If they fought with Zhang Hai, no one knew the result. But if they fought so hard, it was impossible for them to be Zhang Hai's opponent. With a bang, the bodyguard's foot fell to the ground again. He felt that his leg was numb. But fortunately, this blow made Zhang Hai unable to get in the car easily. At this time, another bodyguard caught up. Looking at Zhang Hai in front of him, he immediately waved his fist directly. Compared to the first bodyguard, the second bodyguard was a black man. The night gave him the best cover, but Zhang Hai still couldn't see in the dark. However, it didn't prevent him from perceiving the existence of this guy. He felt this guy's fist coming towards him. Whoosh! Zhang Hai also directly punched the man's chest, but the man's reaction was faster. In fact, the punch just now was just a feint. He had already calculated Zhang Hai's movements. Now, his knee was also aimed at Zhang Hai. When he felt the knee coming, Zhang Hai was actually stunned for a moment. Because at this time, it was easy for him to dodge this attack. But his attack was about to end. Now here, Zhang Hai was afraid that a long delay would lead to trouble. After all, he didn't know who drugged Selena Gomez. If these people were from the local Grey Gang, and he took too long, the other party's reinforcements would come and it would be troublesome. Zhang Hai still couldn't block a bullet. So now, he could only choose to end the battle quickly. At the same time that he forcibly took the knee, Zhang Hai also punched the man's chest. Fist against knee, even a fool would know which side was stronger. In the black man's eyes, he definitely had the upper hand in this exchange. But he didn't expect that this was not a fair fight. His knee did hurt Zhang Hai, but the weight of Zhang Hai's fist was not something he could withstand. In an instant, he punched out and directly sent the black man flying. If he went to do an X-ray at this time, he would find that some of his ribs were already broken. At the same time, his body flew back and smashed into a trash can with a crash. The things inside were smashed everywhere. At the same time, he temporarily lost the ability to fight. At the very least, he needed to rest for a while. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Zhang Hai flashed in front of another bodyguard. This bodyguard had already overcome the soreness in his legs when his companions came over. He rushed over directly. Seeing Zhang Hai coming over, this person didn't say anything and directly threw a heavy punch at Zhang Hai. Seeing that this person's heavy punch was about to hit Zhang Hai suddenly squatted and then grabbed the person's arm with both hands. Then he twisted his body. In the person's extremely surprised eyes, Zhang Hai's body burst out with a huge force. He directly swung the person up and slammed him heavily on the ground. With this swing, the person's arm was officially dislocated. However, Zhang Hai would not let him go easily. He went up and kicked the person's head. This blow was not like the one in the martial arts movies where one blow could knock people out. But it also made him confused. At least, he would not trouble Zhang Hai for the time being. Seeing that these two people were temporarily solved, Zhang Hai also flashed and went to the car. Then, he stepped on the accelerator and rushed out of the alley. At this time, the black man who fell on the trash can also got up. He hurriedly ran a few steps and ran out of the alley. He didn't dare to shoot on the street, so he could only watch Zhang Hai's car go away. He immediately reported the situation here to the headset. "Boss, I'm sorry. Miss Gomez was taken away." Hearing the report here, a bodyguard immediately ran to Pro Walton, who had already run to the door after hearing the news, and whispered. Hearing his words, Pro Walton directly slapped him. Although he could easily dodge, he didn't, and there was no trace of anger in his eyes. This matter was indeed their responsibility. Moreover, Pro Walton was not someone they could afford to offend. Looking at the man's silent appearance, Walton snorted and said, "Trash. Yes, the person who took Miss Gomez away is a master, and the car he drove is a battle shield if I'm not mistaken." Hearing the word trash, the man didn't refute. Instead, he agreed. Then, he talked about the news sent by the black man. "Battle shield? Check it for me and see who the car belongs to." Hearing this man's words, Walton's eyes had a trace of doubt. For a car like the battle shield, in fact, it was not very common in the United States. It was not that Americans could not afford it, but that Americans were not willing to drive such a car. In the United States, successful people basically drove sedans, while young people and rich people drove sports cars. No matter how good the pickup truck was, except for some modified cars, it was also driven by farmers. SUVs, even the best ones, were usually not driven by people. This was different from the domestic car culture. In China, the most important thing was that cars were expensive. The type of car, except for engineering vehicles, was not too important. But in the United States, what kind of car was very particular. If this person came here to visit the club and also drove an SUV, if this person was not a tiger, then he really liked it. And she just happened to know such a person, and she saw this guy tonight. It can't be that guy. Squinting her eyes, Walton's heart, which was originally worried about Gomez's safety, was a little relieved. If it was that guy, driving such a car and having such good skills, it would make sense. But when she thought of Selena Gomez's situation now, her eyes couldn't help but narrow again. If this was the case, then it would be troublesome. So she took out her phone, looked at the familiar number on it, and dialed it. But unfortunately, the phone was connected, but no one answered, which made her feel more and more crisis. "Immediately check for me, where Jiang Hai lives in New York." Without hanging up the phone, Walton said to the bodyguard beside her. After listening to her, the bodyguard nodded, then immediately left and went to the side to make a call. As for Jiang Hai at this time, he did not return to the presidential suite he rented. Of course, he did not hear the phone ring, because the phone was in his coat pocket, and his coat had been thrown in the back seat. It had been stuffed into the sofa cushion because of the fight just now. If the car was very quiet at this time, it would be fine, but the situation now was not good. Because after Selena got in the car, although the car was driving, she was almost unconscious. She just subconsciously felt that she was hot, and then she tore her clothes. Coupled with the original smell in the car, it seemed that the poison in her body was triggered faster. When Jiang Hai got in the car and drove out of the alley, she had already taken off all the clothes outside. At this time, she was tearing her vest. The two women who came up with Jiang Hai were trying to hold her down, but the effect was not very good. From the rearview mirror, Jiang Hai also saw the situation here and could not help but ask in surprise, "What's wrong with her?" She should have been drugged with that kind of drug. With a strange monotonous tone, the girl from India could not help but feel a little puzzled. Living in such places for years, they had long been used to these kinds of things. This kind of thing was not uncommon in nightclubs. That kind of drug. What should we do? Hearing the two women's words, Jiang Hai could not help but be stunned for a moment. There was such a thing? After checking Selena's situation, the girl from Southview thought for a moment and said, "It's not a big problem. She should have been drugged with a very high-level drug. It won't make her delirious, so as long as she's satisfied, the poison should be detoxified. Then I'll have to trouble you. This is my friend. Use your fingers and tongues to help her. I'll pay you later." There was no way to talk about help with these two girls, only benefits. "We may not be able to help her because she was drugged with a very high-level drug. Unless it's done in one go, it will last for a long time." After hesitating for a moment, although dollar was very good, they could not earn it. "Then what should we do?" Hearing the two women's words, Jiang Hai could not help but panic a little. He still owed them a favor. "Aren't you friends? Yours should be fine." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, the girl from Southview said with a smile, "Yeah, your model number, it should be fine." Hearing the girl from Southview's words, the third girl also said with a smile, "Don't joke around. We're really friends, not that kind of relationship." Shaking his head, Jiang Hai really did not think about it. She was drugged with a very high-level drug. Although it won't hurt her brain, if she stays in this state for a long time, it will still be a great burden on her body. Otherwise, she will have to go to the hospital. Hearing that Jiang Hai really did not want to take advantage of her, the girl from South U suggested. Chapter 367. No, we can't go to the hospital. But who knew that when she heard about going to the hospital, Selena, who was already in a state of madness, actually sobered up a little and said loudly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai can also understand her concerns. After all, she is a public figure. If she goes to the hospital and is discovered, then it is really hard to explain. If she goes to that kind of club and is drugged, not only will she suffer, but it is also possible that Walton, that club, and himself will suffer. But if she doesn't go to the hospital, will she continue to be like this? Jiang Hai can't help but have a headache at this time. There is a good hotel in front, don't hesitate, let's go. Seeing Jiang Hai's somewhat hesitant look, the third sister here thought that Jiang Hai didn't want to let go of this opportunity, so he didn't take her to the hospital. She rolled her eyes. In this case, she will help Jiang Hai to get off the donkey. Under her command, Jiang Hai came to a motel. As soon as the car was parked, the third sister here had already gone to get a room, leaving the Southern U girl and Jiang Hai. She took Selena Gomez in. When they went in, they found that the third sister only got a big room. Originally, Jiang Hai was still hesitating. He was going to put her in and leave for another room. But just when he threw Selena Gomez on the bed, she suddenly jumped up and hugged Jiang Hai in an instant. Help me! She opened her somewhat blurred eyes. She also heard the conversation between Jiang Hai and the two women just now. She knew that Jiang Hai was the only one who could help her get rid of this annoying feeling. I can't help it. Feeling as if he wants to melt into her body, Jiang Hai said with some hesitation. You can do it, I don't hate you. It's not love, but Jiang Hai knows that this is the truth. The relationship between him and Selena Gomez is at the level of not hating. For Selena Gomez, who must do this now, rather than giving herself to others, it is better to give herself to Jiang Hai, who she doesn't hate, and it will be easier to end it. After her voice fell, Selena's mouth had already kissed Jiang Hai's lips. Feeling her passion, Jiang Hai seemed to be in a daze at this moment. Looking at the two people in front of him, the two women who brought them in also smiled and were about to leave. But before they left, Jiang Hai waved his hand and told them not to be in a hurry to leave. While dealing with Selena, Jiang Hai also took out the rest of the money he exchanged. Jiang Hai exchanged a total of $220 bills. He spent about 60 bills tonight, and now had about 140 left. Jiang Hai took them all out and handed them to the two women. The two women didn't refuse. Although they didn't come out for Jiang Hai's money, if Jiang Hai wanted to give them money, they wouldn't refuse. After leaving the key to Jiang Hai, they left the room, locked the door, and paid the room fee at the same time. It had to be admitted that sometimes, Jiang Hai often found people who were more loyal. After the door was locked, Selena Gomez's last trace of rationality disappeared. A big battle began in this small hotel just like that. It was already 11 o'clock at night when they entered. It wasn't until 3 o'clock in the morning when the sun rose that they stopped and gradually fell asleep. They didn't know how long they slept. When Jiang Hai felt that someone was looking at him, he woke up from his sleep. As soon as he woke up and opened his eyes, he saw a pair of big eyes looking at him. The owner of these eyes was none other than Selena Gomez, who had an ambiguous relationship with him last night. Seeing Jiang Hai look over, Selena Gomez's face couldn't help but flash a trace of awkwardness and blush. Good morning. Looking at her, Jiang Hai felt that he should say something, but as soon as the words left his mouth, he regretted it. Good morning? What kind of greeting is this? Is this the first thing two people want to say when they get up in the morning? Hey, good morning. Sure enough, hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also smiled and then replied. Then the two of them fell silent again. Neither of them knew what to say. After a while, Selena Gomez pulled the blanket over herself and sat up. Although she had seen everything she wanted to see last night, she was not going to expose herself this morning. I have to go back to practice singing. Listening to her words, Jiang Hai also sat up. Oh, okay. After saying softly, Selena picked up the clothes on the ground with Jiang Hai on her back and put them on. Call me when you have time, I'm leaving first. Standing at the door again, Selena Gomez glanced at Jiang Hai behind her and then said softly. Now the relationship between the two is indeed a bit. Looking at Selena Gomez, who closed the door and left, Jiang Hai hesitated and quickly put on his clothes. At this time, He always felt that he should show off a little, so he still chased out. Fortunately, the money for the room had been paid by the two girls last night, so Zhang Hai just returned the key and chased out. When he went downstairs, Selena Gomez had not yet walked out of the parking lot, and Zhang Hai had already started the engine. "Where are you going? Let me give you a ride." Opening the door of the passenger seat, Zhang Hai looked at her seriously and said, "No need, I'll just take a taxi back." But hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez shook her head and said, now, she and Zhang Hai were really embarrassed. If the two of them were to stay in the same car, no one knew if the atmosphere would freeze. "Come on in, I have nothing to do." However, Zhang Hai is not a person who gives up easily. He shook his head and said to Selena Gomez. Hearing Zhang Hai's firm words, Selena bit her lip and nodded. She went to the passenger seat, fastened her seatbelt, and the two set off. "Where are you going?" Looking at Selena Gomez beside him, Zhang Hai couldn't help but be a little absent-minded. In fact, he knows that it is unlikely for him and her to be together. Let's not talk about other things. The most important thing is that the life Zhang Hai pursues is probably not what she likes. You know, she is a star, a big star. Although she is not a superstar, she is not inferior. It is not an exaggeration to say that she is an A-list star. She is a person who lives in the spotlight. Zhang Hai can't allow his woman to be busy outside all day and only treat him and his home as a place to relax. Zhang Hai doesn't like to be noticed by too many people. Compared with that kind of life, he prefers his current life. But after all, something did happen between him and Selena last night, so it's hard to say. "I'm going to the studio in Brooklyn." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena Gomez also said softly, "Okay, I'll turn on the navigation." Zhang Hai can't even understand Boston. Oh no, he can't even understand Winthrop, let alone New York. Fortunately, human beings are smart enough to invent navigation, so Zhang Hai won't go in circles. Following the navigation, Zhang Hai soon drove out of the Manhattan area and came to the Brooklyn Bridge. There are three very famous bridges in New York, connecting Manhattan and Brooklyn, namely the Brooklyn Bridge, the Manhattan Bridge, and the Williamsburg Bridge. The Statue of Liberty can be seen on the bridge, which is also a view here. Originally, on the bridge, the traffic flow is very large. If there is a traffic accident, there will be a traffic jam. Just like today, Zhang Hai and the others just got on the bridge and they were blocked, and the traffic seemed to be tight. Looking at the motionless traffic in the distance, Zhang Hai and Selena Gomez were not in a hurry, but the atmosphere between the two was indeed a bit awkward, because since the navigation was turned on, there was only the sound of the navigation in the whole car. "Can I call you Selena?" After hesitating, Zhang Hai felt that he should say something. "Of course we're friends, right?" Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena spoke first. Then, she seemed to have thought of something, and she couldn't help but hesitate. If they were friends, then what happened last night would be hard to say. "Oh, we have seen each other many times." Zhang Hai naturally heard the hesitation in her words, but he could only force himself not to hear it and continue to talk to her. At the same time, he seemed to be recalling the number of times he had seen her. "Well, there are many times. The first time I saw you was because you stood up for me." Hearing Zhang Hai talk about the past, Selena also chuckled, as if recalling the scene when she first met Zhang Hai. "At that time, I didn't know you. I was just unhappy with Justin Bieber." With a shrug, Zhang Hai naturally knew what she meant by standing up for him. It was nothing more than the problem with Justin Bieber. "Haha, there are many people who are unhappy with him, but you are the first one who can make him so depressed, that scumbag." Shaking her head, Selena Gomez was interested in Zhang Hai because of her ex-boyfriend. Hey, who hasn't fallen in love with a few wrong people in their life? You'll get used to it. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai also said with a smile. "You fell in love before? Aren't you married?" Looking at Zhang Hai, Selena Gomez also had some understanding of Zhang Hai. It seemed that Zhang Hai's marriage was a wrong marriage. Two people who did not love each other could only suffer together. "Hey, I'm an adult, I must have had friends before." Looking at Selena, Zhang Hai waved his hand and said, "Have you fallen in love with the wrong person before? Tell me about it." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena was also interested. Chapter 368. Do you really want to hear it? Looking at Selena, who was originally a little lifeless, suddenly so interested in his past, Zhang Hai couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. He thought to himself, why is this guy so curious? In fact, Zhang Hai didn't have any love stories from his past. After he graduated from university, he really didn't have a girlfriend because he was a homebody and had to work. Later, when his conditions were better and he wanted to make friends, his parents had a series of accidents. He didn't have time to be with them. Then, he got married to Qi Li in a daze. Everyone knew what happened after that. So, speaking of which, Zhang Hai really didn't seem to have a girlfriend. What he said just now was, firstly, to save face for himself, and secondly, to comfort Selena. Who knew that she would be interested? Hearing her words, Zhang Hai was a little confused. As he asked, his mind spun quickly. Yeah, tell me about it. We're friends. Friends should talk about things that friends should talk about. At this time, Selena looked at Zhang Hai and said with a serious face. For the time being, she put last night's unhappiness aside. Then, okay, I'll tell you. Looking at Selena's eager look, Zhang Hai also organized his words. I remember that a long time ago, I fell in love with a girl. We knew each other and fell in love. When we kissed for the first time, just a second before we kissed, she suddenly said, "Wait a minute." Zhang Hai looked at her serious expression and slowly told the story. When she heard Zhang Hai's words, Selena also looked at Zhang Hai. She also didn't understand why the girl wanted to stop. I was very puzzled at that time. I thought to myself, if you don't want to, you can push me away. What's the meaning of wait a minute? Just when I was puzzled, she took out 3 pieces of candy from her pocket. They were hard candies that children like to eat. One was strawberry flavored, one was apple, and one was lychee flavored. Then she asked me which one I liked. I said I pointed at the lychee flavored one. Before I could ask her why, she ate the candy and then pulled my neck. We kissed just like that. The whole time, there was the taste of lychee. Seeing that she listened seriously, Zhang Hai also slowly said, "What does this mean?" Hearing Zhang Hai's explanation, Selena couldn't help but interrupt him and asked with some doubts. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai nodded and said, "Yes, I was also very puzzled. After we kissed, I asked her what she meant. She told me that life is so long, and she didn't have the confidence to accompany me forever. She could only let me remember that my favorite lychee-flavored food was the taste of her kiss. In the future, whenever I eat lychee-flavored food, I will think of her." Wow, that's a good idea. Hearing Zhang Hai's explanation, Selena also said with a serious face, "Yes." But after graduating from university, she went to another city and we separated. Later, I got married and gradually lost contact with her. My married life wasn't happy, so time couldn't settle down. Finally one day, I earned the startup capital and was ready to leave the country. Before I left, I couldn't suppress the feelings in my heart anymore. I decided to look for her. Looking at the sky outside, Zhang Hai slowly said without moving, "Yes, you should look for her. This is a great love. Did you find her?" Looking at Zhang Hai's yearning expression, Selena seemed to be immersed in it, but if you looked at her eyes, you would find that she was a little evasive. Although she didn't like Zhang Hai, she was still awake in this man's arms this morning. Now, she was listening to this man's story of his past, and it was quite romantic. Deep in her heart, there were indeed some ripples. I found a lot of people and asked a lot about her. After a long time, I found some news. It said that after graduation, she went to another city and found a good job. After working for a few years, she quit her job and opened a candy store. After working hard, she slowly accumulated some wealth. I also found the location of the candy store. That day, I specially changed into my favorite clothes, bought flowers, and rushed to her store. I finally found her. Looking at the clouds in the sky, Zhang Hai didn't move, as if he was afraid that if he moved too much, tears would fall down his face. Selena also looked at Zhang Hai motionlessly. She wanted to know the end of Zhang Hai's story. When I saw her, the first thing I said was, "Do you still remember the taste of lychee candy?" She told me with tears in her eyes that she had never forgotten the taste of lychee candy. Otherwise, she wouldn't have publicized the store. I was suddenly moved to tears. I then asked her, "Can we start over?" But she shook her head. Although we loved each other, we can't go back. When Jiang Hai said this, Selena's eyes were already red, but the result made her sigh in relief. Sorry, I didn't know the end of the story would be like this. Looking at Jiang Hai, who had been looking at the sky at a 45-degree angle, Selena Gomez whispered. She really didn't think that Jiang Hai would have such an unforgettable love. But at this moment, Jiang Hai interrupted her, shook his head, and said, "No, you don't have to apologize. Although she didn't accept me, I'm not sad at all." "You're not sad because you see her happy?" Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Selena suddenly felt sorry for Jiang Hai. Feeling Selena's gaze, Jiang Hai turned his eyes towards her. In an instant, two bright eyes appeared in Selena's eyes. She originally thought that Jiang Hai was holding back his tears, but now it seems that there aren't even a single tear in his eyes. Just when she was a little confused, Jiang Hai's voice also came. "No, I'm really not sad at all because I made this story up. It seems like it's going to rain." "You bastard!" After Jiang Hai finished speaking, Selena went up and punched Jiang Hai's arm heavily. "This bastard! How dare he lie to me? What touching romantic love story. This guy actually made it up." She originally thought that he was looking at the sky at a 45-degree angle to hold back his tears, but who knew that he was actually looking at the dark clouds in the sky? This damn guy. Hey, you're killing me." Looking at Selena punching his arm, Jiang Hai had no other choice but to smile bitterly. He really did make it up. There was no sincerity in it at all. He had never been a person who tortured himself. What love story? Do you think you're watching a Korean drama? Jiang Hai was not interested in acting in Korean films. Japanese films were not bad, especially the SW series. He was still very interested. Cough. How could an ordinary person understand the sorrow of an old driver? "You bastard. I thought I really poked at your sore spot. Damn it. Looking at Jiang Hai's mischievous smile, Selena was really angry. Unfortunately, she didn't have enough strength to fight back. She hit Jiang Hai until her hand hurt, but nothing happened to Jiang Hai. In the end, he could only look at her angrily. Okay, I admit it. I'm actually a stinky loser. What girlfriend? Sigh, I don't exist. If it wasn't because of the accident at home, I might still be a single dog now." Looking at her angry look, Jiang Hai also laughed at himself. He didn't care about self-deprecating, but now it seemed that Selena's mood was much better. At this time, the car also began to move slowly, heading to the other side of the bridge. But at this time, the atmosphere in the car was not as dignified as before. "Single dog. Okay, in fact, I'm also a single dog now." Hearing Jiang Hai's adjective, Selena nodded and said speechlessly. Looking at the dark clouds in the sky, sometimes she really feels a little lonely. "I'll tell you a way, an old dog's way to solve the problem of being single." Seeing that her aura was about to become low again, Jiang Hai couldn't help laughing, and then said to her. After hearing Jiang Hai's words, she looked at him curiously again. "If you feel lonely, you can find a small room, turn off the light, and play a horror movie." Looking at Selena, Jiang Hai said seriously. But his words made Selena somewhat puzzled. "Why? Won't you be afraid?" Looking at Jiang Hai's serious look, Selena asked with a serious face. "I'm afraid so in a while, you will feel that you are not alone in this room." Sure enough, as soon as Jiang Hai finished his answer, Selena was full of energy again, waving her small fists and punching Jiang Hai. Of course, she also knew that Jiang Hai was taking a taxi now, so when she hit Jiang Hai, she hit Jiang Hai's thigh. When she felt the pain in her hand, Selena couldn't help but look at Jiang Hai with a reproachful look and couldn't help but laugh. "Why didn't I realize that your mouth is so sweet? Tell me, you used this method to deceive a lot of women." Looking at Jiang Hai, Selena said with a serious face. From a woman's perspective, a sense of humor is one of the criteria to measure a man. Of course, this criterion has to be ranked after appearance, height, wealth and so on, but it is also one of the criteria. Jiang Hai, although not handsome, is not too ugly. He is more than 1.9 meters tall, which is not bad. She followed Perwalton to discuss business with Jiang Hai, so she naturally knows that Jiang Hai's wealth is quite high. So in this case, Jiang Hai's sense of humor made her feel like she discovered a new world. "Hey! Don't say that, I'm still a seaman. Waving his hand, Zhang Hai said with a shy face. Ha, ha ha. Don't think that I don't know. Let's not talk about the distant past. Let's talk about yesterday. When I got in the car, there were 2 girls in it. Looking at Zhang Hai, Selena said provocatively. Hey, then I just went to talk to them about life and ideals. It doesn't count. Waving his hand, Zhang Hai said casually. They don't count? Okay, I didn't see it with my own eyes. You can still deny it, but what about me? Looking at Zhang Hai, Selena patted Zhang Hai's arm and stared at Zhang Hai with her big eyes with a serious face, which made Zhang Hai a little embarrassed. Hey, you took advantage of me, and you still have the nerve to ask me. You're not married yet. Your shamelessness really makes people hate you. I really want to kick you out of the car. Hearing Zhang Hai say this, Selena was so angry that she laughed. She wanted to hit him, but her hands hurt so much that she could only say this with hatred. If you kick me out, no one will drive. Zhang Hai waved his hand and laughed. No one will drive? Do you think I don't have a driver's license? Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena exploded again. I'm not saying that you don't know how to drive. I'm saying that you're short. He glanced at Selena's height. In fact, Selena wasn't tall. Justin Bieber, that dwarf, was like an American version of a certain someone. He could jump up and punch Yao Ming's ankle. Even with this height, he was half a head taller than Selena. Her height of 1.65 meters was just right. Hey, you're digging your own grave. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Selena finally couldn't hold it in anymore and pounced on Zhang Hai. Chapter 369. Then I'm leaving. Remember to call me, if you have time. After getting out of the car, Selena Gomez glanced at Zhang Hai, who also got out of the car and stood in front of the car looking at her. She hesitated for a moment and spoke. After all, after what happened last night, the relationship between the two was not as casual as before. In addition, when they drove here, the two had some communication, so the two didn't feel so unfamiliar. Of course. Hearing Selena's words, Zhang Hai nodded immediately. He naturally wouldn't refuse this suggestion. Then I'm leaving. Selena was very sure that she had exchanged phone numbers with Zhang Hai, so after hearing Zhang Hai's straightforward answer without any hesitation, her little face couldn't help but chuckle. She then turned her head and walked into her studio. Watching her figure slowly disappear, Zhang Hai, who was leaning against the car, couldn't help but curl his lips. It seemed that he didn't know what to do in the future. Now he could only take one step at a time. Watching Selena's back disappear, Zhang Hai stretched his body and returned to the driver's seat. He then drove the car away from here. But he didn't notice that at this time, on the first floor and the second floor of the studio, a pair of eyes were staring at him. On the first floor was Selena Gomez, who had just walked in, and on the second floor was a man, a guy named Anton Slavsky, but not many people in Europe and the United States knew his name. His stage name was EDD. A well-known music producer and DJ in the United States, he was very famous in the circle. And now Selena Gomez was working with him. Of course, he had other thoughts. As for Selena Gomez, who was downstairs, watching Zhang Hai leave, she didn't know what to say. She knew that Zhang Hai was not a good home, but women always had a different feeling for people who had sex with them. This was what Selena Gomez was struggling with at this time. At that moment, the phone that she had set to silent yesterday vibrated again. Looking at the name on the screen, she hesitated for a moment before picking it up. She listened to the concerned and gentle words on the other end of the phone, but her face remained expressionless. I'm sorry. I don't think I misunderstood anything. Let's not meet again in the future because I already have someone I like. Facing the gentle female voice on the other side of the phone, Selena Gomez didn't want what happened last night to happen again. So she said stiffly to the person. After saying that, she directly hung up the phone and put the person on the blacklist. She didn't know if the person would take revenge on her after she said that, but when she thought of Zhang Hai, the original sense of crisis gradually disappeared. Because she knew that when she was desperate, there was still a man she could rely on. However, Zhang Hai didn't know this now. After he left here, he was ready to go back to his hotel to sleep. Because he really felt that there was nothing fun to do. Although the place last night was interesting. But this time, Zhang Hai didn't want to go again for the time being. Sometimes, it wasn't a good choice to stay in an overly excited state.
Recently, he felt that he seemed to have more and more needs in that area, and it was getting higher and higher.
This made him a little worried. There was no land that could be plowed, only cows that were tired to death. Although he now has twice the physical fitness of a human being, if he always drags 2 or 3 people, he will be finished sooner or later. It's better to be careful. As the world's largest city, traffic jams are normal. When Jiang Hai returned to the Manhattan area, his car was stuck again. When he was bored, he couldn't help but think of Selena Gomez's words, saying that he would call her. At the same time, he was surprised. It seems that he hasn't played with his mobile phone for a long time. Hey, where's my phone? Touching his trouser pocket, Jiang Hai muttered strangely. Looking around, he found that his coat was about to be stuffed under the back seat at this time. Jiang Hai couldn't help but mutter. Fortunately, his coat was not a suit, but an ordinary outdoor sportswear. He didn't need to worry about it getting dirty. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome. He reached over and pulled the coat over. Sure enough, Jiang Hai's mobile phone was in the coat. But at this time, the battery of the mobile phone had already been used up. Although Jiang Hai has a lot of money, he doesn't care much about mobile phones. So now he only uses the lowest level phone in the United States, Fruit 6 Plus. As mentioned before, this phone is really worthless in the United States. Of course, if you buy it back in China, it is still worth some money. It is worth about 3,000 yuan, which is about 1,000 yuan cheaper. But here in the United States, as long as you use the phone operator's number here, this thing is almost the same as giving it to you for free. To be honest, the apps in Jiang Hai's mobile phone are much more valuable than the phone itself. Because you can't jailbreak here, you will be caught playing pirated games. All the games, Jiang Hai pays for them. This phone's standby time is not too long. Now that it is turned off, it naturally has no battery. After plugging in the charger, not long after, Jiang Hai turned on the phone again. But just as he turned it on, a series of messages came in. Among them, there are more than 30 missed calls. It is estimated that the last trace of battery of this phone was used up by these calls. One of them is from Moses Adams, and another is from Daliana. Other than that, there is only one number, Walton. Looking at these numbers, Jiang Hai can't help but slap his forehead. He just remembered that Selena Gomez went with Walton yesterday. It seems that this woman is waiting anxiously. This also made Jiang Hai feel a little embarrassed. After hesitating, he called Daliana first. Daliana really has nothing to do. She just asked about Jiang Hai's situation. Jiang Hai naturally won't tell her where he went last night, so he just laughed it off. Then he called Moses Adams and learned that the town's contract has basically been finalized. When Jiang Hai comes back to sign the transfer, the construction will begin. The final share is almost the same as the last negotiation. Jiang Hai can't help but shake his fist. This is the most important person. After making an appointment with Moses Adams that he will go back tomorrow, Jiang Hai called Walton. The phone rang only once before it was picked up. You finally appeared, Jiang Hai. I thought you would hide for a lifetime. As soon as the phone was connected, Walton on the other side of the phone said coldly. Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but be stunned. What does she mean by hiding for a lifetime? My phone ran out of battery last night. I just charged it now. I saw you make so many calls. Is there a problem with the beef? Looking at Walton, Jiang Hai asked curiously. The beef is fine, but there seems to be some problems between us. I don't know where you were last night. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Walton on the other side of the phone took a deep breath. Her words were like gunpowder. Last night? Where was I last night? Didn't you see me? If you have something to say, just say it. Hearing the strong hostility in her words, Jiang Hai was not so good-tempered. The two said that they were partners, but in fact, the relationship between the two was not particularly close. Because Walton always had the air of a monarch. This is what Jiang Hai doesn't like. Many men in the north have chauvinism, which is male chauvinism. Although Jiang Hai is not too serious because of his original living habits, this kind of tone still makes him very uncomfortable. You still have a reason. Where did you take Selena? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Walton on the other side of the phone also said loudly. You still have the nerve to ask me? You were with Selena. How could you let her be drugged? Listening to Walton's questioning, Zhang Hai was a little embarrassed for a moment, but his reaction was not slow. He immediately said to her loudly, "That's because, Shu, we can't explain it over the phone. Let's meet." Perwalton listened to Zhang Hai's words and couldn't help but take a deep breath. She and Zhang Hai are partners, so she can't easily fall out with him. Now, Zhang Hai's beef has quickly occupied a considerable share in the upper class, so although Zhang Hai stole her, she can't easily fall out with Zhang Hai. Most importantly, nothing happened between her and Selena Gomez. Yes, the person who called Selena Gomez just now was no one else but her. And for Selena Gomez's words, she was naturally burning with anger. She knew that the person Selena said she fell in love with was very likely Zhang Hai. Whether it was true or not, she had no time to think at this time. Now, she just wanted to see Zhang Hai and destroy his relationship with Selena. Sometimes, women really go crazy for love. If not for Perwalton's many years of capital habits as a businesswoman, she might have already terminated the beef sales contract with Zhang Hai. Most importantly, she couldn't stand her ground. She couldn't possibly say that she was the one who drugged Selena. "Okay, where do you want to meet?" Although he didn't know why this woman was looking for him, Zhang Hai still decided to meet her. He was also very curious. Why did this woman act as if she had eaten gunpowder? Moreover, Zhang Hai was also very confused. Selena Gomez had always been with her. How did she get drugged? Zhang Hai probably couldn't figure it out even if he cracked his head. This Perwalton was actually a big problem. Now that he heard that she wanted to meet him, Zhang Hai agreed. "Come to my home, Atlantic City." Chapter 370. It should be here. While driving according to the navigation, Zhang Hai looked at the city in front of him. To be honest, this city is more prosperous than Winthrop or even Boston, but Zhang Hai has almost never heard of this place. But after entering the city, Zhang Hai also looked up the city on the internet. As a result, he found that this city is really famous. Atlantic City is located in New Jersey. Although it is across the state, it is not far from New York. This city is only 92 kilometers away from Philadelphia, the birthplace of the United States, and only 160 kilometers away from New York. The city was founded in 1854 and the railway was built in 1898. The city developed very quickly, but it was not a place of heavy or light industry. The reason why it is so famous is mainly because it is the best tourist and leisure city. Before Las Vegas, Atlantic City was the largest gambling city in the United States. In 1976, the first legal casino in the United States was actually opened here. Because of the legalization of gambling, this city became the most important city in the United States almost overnight. But after the establishment of Las Vegas, its scenery was not as dazzling as before. However, with the appearance of the Atlantic Empire in an American TV series, this city rose again and became the largest gambling city on the East Coast. It is not just a matter of words. Even if it is not as good as La Visca's, it can still be ranked in the world. Zhang Hai has never been to La Visca's, so when he first entered the city and found that there were casinos everywhere, he was really curious, but it stopped at curiosity. Zhang Hai used to be a prostitute, and he is still a prostitute now. He knows that alcohol and sex are mainly harmful to the body, and gambling and drugs can ruin a person's family. Zhang Hai's self-control is very strong. He usually doesn't gamble. Even when he goes home for the new year, he plays small mahjong and the like. 1 yuan or 2 yuan bets, the winning and losing of a night is not enough for a red card, so this is just playing. Zhang Hai won't play casually. But this doesn't stop his curiosity. While looking at the unique buildings of the city, Zhang Hai went to the address Perwalton sent him. Not long after, a manor with a large area appeared in front of him. While looking at the manor, Zhang Hai drove forward. Sure enough, the number that Zhang Hai was looking for was posted on the door of the manor. TSK, really rich. Looking at the huge manor in front of him, Zhang Hai couldn't help but click his tongue. He pressed the doorbell and reported his name. Not long after, a pair of young women in maid outfits walked out of the manor. After respectfully opening the door, an exclusive driver went to help Zhang Hai park the car, and the person on the other side led Zhang Hai into the manor in front of him. Zhang Hai walked and looked here together. He was really curious. This manor, in fact, is naturally not as big as Zhang Hai's manor, but it is much bigger than Elder Zhang's manor. Just for living, it has to be said that this manor is really luxurious. This manor covers an area of about 3 acres. 1 acre is 15 acres, and 1 acre is 666 square meters. In other words, this manor is 30,000 square meters. In front of them was a huge green garden path made up of small trees and flowers. It was like a maze in the movies, with one on each side. At the end of the path in the middle, there was a small flower bed with a fountain in the middle. Behind the fountain is a huge Western-style 3-story villa. This villa is completely different from Zhang Hai's small villa. This house is at least 5 times bigger than Zhang Hai's house. It looks really scary just standing there. Zhang Hai used to know that Prawalton is rich. Even without the Walmart behind it, this woman will still have a lot of money. But he didn't expect that this woman is not only rich, but also willing to spend so much money. According to Zhang Hai's estimation, this manor alone is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. In that case, it wasn't too expensive to spend 200 million yuan on such a large manor. "Mr. Zhang, this way please." The maid leading the way naturally knows that Zhang Hai is looking around, but she doesn't care. As if she didn't see it, she led Zhang Hai to the front of the villa, opened the door, and motioned for Zhang Hai to follow her in. Zhang Hai also smiled and followed her in. As soon as he entered the villa, Zhang Hai's heart couldn't help but skip half a beat. From the outside, this manor was already extremely luxurious, but from the inside, this villa's interior decoration was dozens of streets ahead of his own. In fact, Zhang Hai has always thought that the decoration of his manor is good. After all, he spent millions of dollars on it. But compared with Prawalton's villa, it is really a far cry. As soon as he entered the villa, the first thing that caught Zhang Hai's eyes was a huge hall. The hall is 3 stories high, which is to say, this hall is directly connected to the top of the villa. The roof of the hall is made of one-way glass, and the sunlight outside can easily shine in, making the whole hall very bright. The most eye-catching thing is a huge chandelier hanging in the air. The huge chandelier is made of tens of thousands of crystal balls. Needless to say, when it is turned on, how bright it will be. In the middle of the hall, there is a classic leather sofa, a handmade Persian carpet, and the wall lamps on the wall are all golden. Although he doesn't know if they are really made of gold or just plated, at least they are not brass. The strong Western-style architecture really left a deep impression on Zhang Hai. He has to admit that in terms of taste, she is indeed better than him. And it seems that she is more willing to spend money, although he doesn't know much about it. But according to the price that Zhang Hai learned when he renovated his house, this hall alone will cost millions of dollars. While Zhang Hai is looking at this place, in the middle of the hall, a group of women are sitting in the distance, watching Zhang Hai walk in. Following their gazes, Zhang Hai also looked at them. Seeing this, Zhang Hai can't help but be a little surprised, because Zhang Hai has seen these people before. The woman sitting in the middle is none other than Prawalton. At this time, she has neatly combed her hair into a circle, and Zhang Hai doesn't know what it is called. She is wearing pajamas made of black gauze. The pajamas are not thin, but it is faintly transparent. With Zhang Hai's eyesight, he can see that this woman is wearing nothing inside. This makes Zhang Hai feel a little embarrassed. At the same time, he thinks maliciously in his heart, is she here to ask me to push her down? But obviously, he thinks too much, because at this time, Prawalton is looking at Zhang Hai with a murderous look in her eyes. Her eyes are a little red because she didn't sleep all night, which is even more frightening. Her hand holding the wine glass is also secretly tightening. She is afraid that she will lose control and throw the wine glass at this damn Zhang Hai. Prawalton has such an expression, and the people around her are naturally the same. At this time, the people beside her are not unfamiliar to Zhang Hai. They are the 5 women who accompanied her last night. But at this time, these women are wearing very sexy clothes. Almost nothing is covered except for the important parts, and the most important parts are tightly wrapped. Zhang Hai is not particularly unfamiliar with this kind of clothes, because Feng Yunqin and the others also brought this type of clothes. At this time, these 5 women are also glaring at Zhang Hai, which makes Zhang Hai a little confused. He doesn't seem to have provoked them. "You are here." Seeing Zhang Hai coming over, Prawalton said faintly. "Yeah, I don't know why you called me over." Under the guidance of the woman, Zhang Hai sat opposite Prawalton and asked curiously. He really didn't understand what she meant. This, Li Zixuan, Korean. 1. 78 meters tall, 23 years old, still C, 3 measurements. Looking at Zhang Hai, Prawalton pulled the Asian woman beside her and said with a serious face. Wait, what do you mean by this? Looking at Prawalton's hand, constantly rubbing the Asian woman's body, Zhang Hai couldn't help but wave his hand. What does she mean? Why can't Zhang Hai understand? As long as you leave Selena Gomez, she is yours, you can do whatever you want. After Prawalton finished speaking, she pushed her to Zhang Hai's side. The woman didn't think that she would be thrown over like this. She was shocked for a while. Her body tilted and she fell on Zhang Hai's body. This is also Zhang Hai's fault. He saw that the woman was about to fall, so he subconsciously wanted to catch her, but when he heard Prawalton's words, Zhang Hai's figure couldn't help but stagnate. For a while, he didn't know whether he should catch her or not. Just as he was in a dilemma, the woman had fallen into his arms. Feeling this tall and unusually plump figure, Zhang Hai was stunned this time. What's going on? What's going on? Why can't I figure it out? One is not enough. This is Colleen Pavlovich from Croatia, a former flight attendant, 22 years old, doesn't have that kind of experience. 75 meters tall. She's also for you. Looking at Zhang Hai's panicked face, but he didn't agree, Prawalton pulled up another woman and threw her into Zhang Hai's arms. Hearing Prawalton's words, Zhang Hai felt ridiculous, and the two women felt a little unbelievable. Their eyes were full of loneliness, but they didn't resist. Their bodies were stiff, lying on Zhang Hai's body, motionless, waiting for the final decision. Chapter 371. Not enough. This is Martina, she is from Argentina, this is also for you. This is Fail, from Australia, this is also for you. This is Isabel, from France, this is also for you. Looking at Zhang Hai's silent look, Prawalton was really going crazy. She threw the wine glass in her hand, then pulled the other 3 girls and pushed them one by one to Zhang Hai. It was fine when she pushed the first 2 girls, but when she pushed the third one, she obviously used too much strength. This girl was not ready, or rather, the 5 girls were not ready at this time. When she ran forward, she accidentally stepped on the glass that Prawalton had just broken. In an instant, a wound appeared on her foot. Seeing this, Zhang Hai, who was still a little confused, immediately pushed the 4 beauties away, then pulled the 5th girl, put her on the sofa, and checked the wound on her foot. Although the glass cut into her flesh, it was not deep. After Zhang Hai pulled out the glass, he picked up the paper next to her and let her press on it. As for Prawalton, she was also a little confused at this time. Looking at the bleeding girl, she subconsciously wanted to go forward, but after hesitating, she stopped and looked at Zhang Hai with a gloomy face. Are you crazy? Are you sick? You called me here just to say this? Looking at the tears in the girl's eyes, plus Prawalton's words just now, Zhang Hai couldn't help but stand up and said sternly. Yes, I'm crazy, I'm sick. Do you know how much I love Selena? But you secretly took advantage of her and stole her heart. You know how much I hate you, you bastard. Looking at Zhang Hai, Prawalton also recovered from the shock just now and shouted at Zhang Hai loudly. Love my ass, you're a girl, what love do you have? Hearing her words, Zhang Hai couldn't help but say loudly. What's wrong with women? Can't a woman love another woman? At least I'm better than you stinky men. Other than using your power to force women, what else can you do? You're also a stinky man. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Prawalton jumped and cursed at Zhang Hai like a ferocious beast that had been stabbed in the ribs. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai was really speechless for a moment because the law in the United States allowed same-sex relationships. Marriage was allowed, let alone friendship. In fact, it was not only in the United States now, such a trend was gradually spreading in China. It was just that most people still found it difficult to accept this. Zhang Hai was also a traditional person, at least his way of thinking was very traditional, so he really didn't know what to say. After all, they were not in China, but in the United States. Here they were legal. Crazy. Looking at the crazy Prawalton, Zhang Hai hesitated and cursed. In fact, he had long felt that Prawalton had some problems, but he didn't think about it that way. Now it seemed that she should be the legendary lesbian, but after last night's incident, he found that Selena seemed to be quite normal. Combined with the fact that she had taken Selena and the others to the club last night, Zhang Hai seemed to understand something. It seemed that this was a melodramatic plot, but the original brainless second-generation characters had become Prowalton. In this way, Selena said that her heart was with him. It was probably that she wanted him to help her block a shot. What made Jiang Hai most depressed was that it was really difficult for him to dodge this shot. After all, last night, he did have some ambiguous things with Selena, which made it difficult for Jiang Hai to say some things. So he could only curse and turn around to leave, but at this moment, Prowalton ran over and hugged Jiang Hai from behind. Feeling her body, Jiang Hai couldn't help but stop for a moment. I beg you, you can live without her, but I can't. If you need, I can help you solve it. Really, I have a lot of beautiful women here. If it's not enough, I can help you find them all over the world. Please, give Selena back to me. Seeing that Jiang Hai was about to leave, Prowalton finally couldn't take it anymore. She hugged Jiang Hai's waist and said loudly. She knew that in front of Jiang Hai, her most powerful card was useless, because Jiang Hai was a jerk. Jiang Hai was quite a jerk. Jiang Hai wasn't short of money. If he didn't take into account his family's money, Jiang Hai was much richer than her. Jiang Hai could take out at least $1 billion. Secondly, although Jiang Hai's beef was his lifeline, the market for his beef had opened up. Even if he didn't want it, there would be people who would fight for it. Zhang Dihai wouldn't let go of such an opportunity, let alone others. Jiang Hai didn't buy it with money, let alone force. So Prowalton really didn't know what to do now. She had no other choice but to cry and complain. Jiang Hai stood there speechless. What's going on? Why am I so unlucky? Since he had decided to help Selena, Jiang Hai wouldn't go back on his words. But what about Prowalton now? To be honest, Jiang Hai really didn't want to lose Prowalton as an ally. First, Prowalton itself represented the world's largest supermarket brand, Walmart. The sales of his beef in the United States mainly depended on them. Second, their brand and group could save him a lot of trouble. Jiang Hai's beef was good. In fact, as long as someone asked around, they could find out where Jiang Hai was. The reason why Jiang Hai could still live so freely and didn't have to deal with those troubles in the business world was because of two reasons. First, it was because of the quality of his beef. Second, it was also because of the Walmart group. When others inquired about the cooperation between Jiang Hai and the Walmart group, some people who weren't strong enough would automatically withdraw, which saved Jiang Hai a lot of trouble. However, if these business matters were involved in personal affairs, Jiang Hai would be a little conflicted. On the one hand, he didn't want to lose Prowalton as an ally. On the other hand, he had decided to help Selena. If he betrayed her now, it was really not good. Most importantly, he wasn't a fake boyfriend. Something that shouldn't have happened last night made Jiang Hai very conflicted. Although Jiang Hai's character was very decisive when he was alone, he was a little overwhelmed when it came to these things. Indecisive. These 4 words were really good to describe him, especially in the aspect of relationships. Just when Jiang Hai was thinking about whether to tell Prowalton that he just took advantage of her and didn't confirm their relationship, or pull her hand away and stride away, Prowalton made a new move. I understand. Are you embarrassed? It's okay. I'll help you. Seeing that Jiang Hai didn't speak, Prowalton directly put her hand into Jiang Hai's pants. Before Jiang Hai could pull her hand away, she had already pulled down Jiang Hai's pants. In an instant, something that shouldn't be there appeared here. Seeing this scene, everyone in the house was stunned. It was because of Prowalton. In this huge villa, there was not a single man, not even a male animal, let alone a man. There were a few dogs in the backyard, and they were all female. The bodyguards, drivers, gardeners, and cooks of the manor were all female. Since the establishment of the manor, this was the first time such a thing had appeared here. Including the 5 girls who still had some numbness at this time, their faces were also sluggish, looking at Jiang Hai blankly. What are you doing? Don't be crazy. Selena and I. Something did happen between us, but it hasn't progressed to that point yet. Okay, I have to go. I have to go back and sign the contract. Feeling that his lower body was cold, Jiang Hai was startled. He immediately broke free from Prowalton's hand, then jumped away and pulled up his pants again. Now he had to make it clear to Prowalton, because who knew what this woman would do next? Of course, he didn't say it so firmly, because he didn't want to let Selena Gomez down. After all, he did have a relationship with her, and she wanted to use him to get rid of Perwalton. This was also what Zhang Hai wanted to see.
A woman who had a relationship with him being coveted by others all day long. He was not happy in his heart, even if this person was a woman.
So although Zhang Hai said it, his words were somewhat ambiguous. After that, Zhang Hai didn't care about Perwalton anymore, and directly ran out of the manor. If it was not necessary, he was not going to come back in the future. After listening to Zhang Hai's words, Perwalton's eyes, which had been a little desperate, recovered. It hasn't reached that point yet? That is to say, I still have a chance. I have to think of a way to make Selena completely give up on this guy. Looking at Zhang Hai running away, Perwalton whispered. As soon as she looked back, she just saw the 5 girls sitting on the sofa in the distance, and the corners of her mouth slowly curled up. She thought that she should have thought of a good idea. What is the most taboo between men and women? Betrayal. There was an old saying in Huaxia, to catch a thief, you have to get the dirt, to catch an adulterer, you have to catch both of them. If Selena saw Zhang Hai with another woman, she would probably be disappointed in Zhang Hai, disappointed in men. At that time, it would be the easiest time for him to get his hands on her. Chapter 372. I'm finally back. Lying on the sofa in her home, Feng Yunqin said with a happy face. Even if they took a first-class plane back, it still made her a little depressed. Flying is really not a fun thing. In fact, whether it's by car, train, plane or ship, it's actually very tiring. However, it was true that first-class cabins and the like could rest better. Sister Chen, don't you want to pack up? Looking at Feng Yunqin, who was lying directly on the sofa without any image, Ai Xiaoxi couldn't help but sigh. She looked at her sister with some hesitation and asked speechlessly. Xiaoxi, don't worry about this anymore. You've been on the plane for more than 10 hours. Aren't you tired? Waving her hand, Feng Yunqin said to Ai Xiaoxi, but Ai Xiaoxi sighed and shook her head. This sister Chen really can't do anything to her. But thinking about it, this trip was also thanks to her care, so Ai Xiaoxi didn't say anything. She just put their luggage on the sofa and began to pack. In fact, it's called luggage, but it's mainly the clothes they wear. The company's photography clothes, cameras, and other things were packed separately in the United States. After getting off the plane, naturally, people from the company came to pick them up. Those things have already been taken away by the company's people, but when they were dividing the luggage, they unexpectedly found 2 sets of packaged clothes with Zhang Hai's name written on them. At first they were stunned. Until they found out that these were 2 sets of women's clothes, their faces couldn't help but blush. They knew that these were given to them by Zhang Hai. So under the gaze of the staff who came to pick them up, they took these 2 sets of clothes and their luggage and left. Returning to their home in the capital, both Feng Yunqin and Ai Xiaoxi felt a little emotional. Sister Chen, how much do you think Zhang Hai bought us this set of clothes? Pulling the things over, the most conspicuous one was the set of clothes placed on the top. This set of clothes was not from the same brand, but a mix of them. The trench coat is from Burberry. There are also Donkey brand, Chanel, Versace, Givenchy. Anyway, Zhang Hai doesn't really choose. He just buys whichever one he thinks is beautiful. Money. He didn't really care about these things. Therefore, from a professional fashion point of view, Zhang Hai's outfit was indeed a little strange. It was a little too extravagant. After all, Zhang Hai had bought the most expensive non-custom-made products among these brands. However, in the eyes of ordinary people, these clothes were really very beautiful. It was also very good to wear them out and mix them up. Ai Xiaoxi looked at the clothes in her hand and asked Feng Yunqin curiously. She had just entered this circle. Although she longed for these clothes, she didn't know much. For a woman, a good dress was always the best. Can't you check it yourself? She rolled her eyes at Ai Xiaoxi. In fact, when she came back just now, Feng Yunqin had already checked, but she didn't say it clearly because there were some things that she had to check herself to show more sincerity. Yeah. Hearing Feng Yunqin's words, Xiaoxi slapped her forehead and began to search online. Needless to say, the internet was really powerful now. Under her inquiry, it didn't take long for her to find the price of these clothes. However, that was in the United States and this was in China. The luxury goods in China were more expensive than in the United States. God, this set of clothes is close to 2 million yuan? Pointing at the clothes, Xueqi's eyes were full of shock. Originally, she entered this industry for money. Now, just by a trip to the United States, not only did she shoot a fashion film, but she also got clothes worth 2 million yuan? She suddenly found it hard to accept. No, this gift is too expensive. I can't accept it. I'd better send it back to Shanghai. She hesitated for a moment. Although she really wanted to sell this set of clothes and send the money home, she knew that she couldn't do so. So after thinking for a while, she decided to send the clothes back to Shanghai. These things are too precious. Well, 2 million yuan is nothing to Shanghai. It's not like you don't know his ability. Just accept it. All right, don't think about selling these clothes. Take the money back to your parents. This is from Shanghai. It should be enough for you to live a good life. Seeing that she really wanted to get up and send it back, Feng Yunchen couldn't help but sigh. This Xueqi is really a good girl, but since she's a good girl, then there should be someone who likes her to love her. She didn't know whether the matter between her and Shanghai was a good thing or a bad thing. After pulling her to sit down, she also took out a Visa bank card from her bag and stuffed it into her hand. Sister Chen, I can't accept this money. Shanghai and I are willing. I don't want our relationship to become related to money. I won't say anything about us. Looking at Feng Yunchen in front of her and the card she handed over, Xueqi frowned. What does Shanghai mean by this? Is he trying to shut me up? I heard that he also has a wife in the country. Is he afraid that I'll talk nonsense and cause trouble for him? Thinking of this, Xueqi's heart couldn't help but feel empty. What are you thinking? Shanghai is not the kind of person you think he is. I also have a card. This is not a breakup fee, nor is it hush money. You can tell whoever you want about your relationship with Shanghai. With this relationship, even if you don't become famous in the country, no one will dare to touch you. This is just a simple pocket money for you. I also heard about your family's matters. I can't help you, but this money, you can use it however you want. Feng Yunchen patted Xueqi's head with the card. This little girl's mind is really messy. What is she thinking about? This guy, I was going to forget him when I returned to the country. Now it seems that I can't forget him. Hearing Feng Yunchen say this, Xueqi also slowly took the bank card. Looking at the bank card that Shanghai specially chose with the ending number 520, Xueqi really didn't know what to say. Is Shanghai confessing to me? Am I really going to be Shanghai's lover for the rest of my life? But in retrospect, it doesn't seem like a bad idea to be his lover. Xueqi shook her head and threw this thought out. She took a deep breath and then slowly exhaled. In any case, Shanghai really helped her a lot this time. She really needed money now. I'll just take it as a loan. She hesitated for a moment before stuffing the card into her wallet. There are $1 million in the card, about 6 million yuan. When you want to use it, you need to go to the bank in the country to activate it first and exchange it for yuan before you can use it. Do you understand? Seeing Xueqi take the bank card, Feng Yunchen continued to speak lazily. In fact, she was also a little tangled in the depths of her heart, but she knew that she was a person with a dark history. There was no way for her to stand by Shanghai's side openly, but this Xueqi, she had a good chance. But no matter how she acted, it wouldn't be very good. Shanghai gave the money and gave it to Xueqi because Shanghai heard about her experience. Secondly, it was because they had a relationship with him, so he wouldn't let them lack money to spend. And giving it to Feng Yunchen might have another meaning. This was also a problem for her to choose a side again. More than 6 million. Okay. She just received 2 million yuan worth of clothes, and now she received 6 million yuan in cash. Suddenly, Xueqi felt that she seemed to have become the kind of person she despised the most. But she had to admit that money came really fast. After carefully putting the card into her compartment, Xueqi packed up her things again. But when she opened her backpack and looked at the brand new SLR camera inside, she felt as if her heart was punched. When she talked to Shanghai in the forest, she expressed her love for photography. She really didn't expect that Shanghai would still remember it. Shanghai gave her money and clothes. To be honest, it wasn't as shocking as this opportunity. This guy. Looking at the camera in her backpack, Xueqi's eyes seemed to be hazy. Xueqi, let's move and live together. I want to sell this house. Just as Xueqi was about to cry from being moved by Shanghai, Feng Yunchen's voice gradually came over. That clear voice seemed to be telling her that she had also made a choice. At this time, Jiang Hai didn't know what happened in the capital, and he naturally didn't know what happened in Boston. As a flight landed at the airport in Boston, a big man with a height of more than 2 meters squeezed out of the closed cabin and walked out of the airport. Behind him, there was a sloppy white man. Is this Boston? Standing on the land outside the airport, the big man said in a buzzing voice. Yeah, this is Boston. Let's go, big man. I'll take you to see our boss.
Hearing the words of the big man, the white man turned his head with a smile and said to the big man behind him.
Your boss? I'm not interested in him. I'm here to find this person.
After listening to the words of the white man in front of him, the big man didn't answer. Instead, he shook his head with a serious face and pointed to the business card in his hand.
Only to see a person's name written on this business card. Moses Adams. In addition to this person's name, there was only a phone number, but it seemed that the big man wasn't going to make this call, or he had already made a call, but there was no news. Don't worry. My boss is a very powerful person in our area. There is no one in Boston that he can't find. Let's go. Looking at the big man behind him who seemed to have a low IQ, the white man in front smiled and led him outside. Chapter 373. It's really unlucky, but fortunately, I'll be signing the contract tomorrow. Jiang Hai naturally didn't know about this at this time. After he left his home in Prowalton, he drove back to his manor. After what happened last night, Jiang Hai was indeed a little embarrassed about Aphrodite, but that feeling had gradually disappeared. In addition, he had to sign the contract tomorrow, so he had to rush back tonight. He left Atlantic City. Jiang Hai didn't have time to have fun in this gambling city on the East Coast, so he drove back to his manor. From Atlantic City to New York, it took more than an hour. From New York to Boston, it took more than 3 hours. From Boston to his manor, it took more than half an hour. In between, Jiang Hai stopped the car a few times, rested a few times, ate some food, and went to the bathroom. So when he came back, the sky was already faintly dark. As the car drove into his manor, Jiang Hai looked at the familiar image. Although he had only left for a few days, he was still very pleased. At least in his opinion, returning to his own home was the most comfortable thing. Compared to those who liked to run outside all day long, Jiang Hai still preferred his own home. After parking the car, Jiang Hai returned to the villa. At this time, Daliana and Marian were sitting there watching TV. Seeing Jiang Hai come back, they were surprised because they didn't expect Jiang Hai to come back today. However, they were still very happy about this surprise. For them, the difference between having Jiang Hai and not having Jiang Hai in the family was getting bigger and bigger. It was no longer like the time when Jiang Hai wasn't there. It didn't make much difference whether he was there or not. After having a delicious dinner at home, Jiang Hai, Daliana, and Marian watched TV together for a while, and then the two girls went upstairs to sleep. Jiang Hai also returned to his room to rest. The next morning, Jiang Hai went out for a run and came back for breakfast. When he came back, everyone was already busy. The fishermen began to prepare the feed, the cowboys began to herd the cattle, and Aphrodite went to the vineyard to get ready to work. Because Jiang Hai's vineyard didn't use pesticides and fertilizers, everything was grown naturally. Of course, the biggest effect was the nourishment of Jiang Hai's spiritual energy. But in any case, the vineyard still grew very well. But because there were no pesticides, the insects in nature also knew that this place was very good. The insects in the vegetable fields were sometimes eaten by wyverns and chicks, but the insects in the grape trellis couldn't be eaten by the chicks. If they flew up to eat them, they would easily spoil the grapes. Therefore, every morning, they had to manually remove the insects. They had to use their hands to kill the insects or destroy their eggs. This required a lot of labor. Of course, Jiang Hai never came here to do this work, because he was quite afraid of insects, very, very afraid. Jiang Hai wasn't afraid of other things, such as snakes, lizards, and beasts, but his resistance to insects was very weak. Thinking back to when he went into the sea, the only time he was scared was because of the giant deep-sea louse. The people in Jiang Hai's manor were surprised to see Jiang Hai come back. This was because they didn't hear that Jiang Hai would come back at this time. Now that they saw Jiang Hai come back, they were very happy. Especially Aphrodite, the way she looked at Jiang Hai changed. But it was also because of this that Zhang Hai felt a little burdened. After saying hello to everyone, Zhang Hai returned home. After eating breakfast, he went to his warehouse to check it out. As the warehouse door opened, the situation inside was reflected in his eyes. In the corner of the warehouse, a woman was sitting in an iron cage, bored, and looking at the ceiling light. This woman was none other than Azalina Vikabu, the woman who attacked Zhang Hai. She had been here for almost a week. Zhang Hai could basically conclude that this woman's original target wasn't him. It was just an accident. But whether it was an accident or not, this woman knew some things about Zhang Hai. So Zhang Hai was in a dilemma. What should he do? Logically speaking, the best choice was to directly kill her and throw her into the sea for big idiot. But after all, Zhang Hai was still an ordinary person. He wasn't a ruthless person. Zhang Hai couldn't kill her just like that. But Zhang Hai couldn't just let her go like that. It was because of this that he left her here. Zhang Hai didn't mistreat this woman. Other than locking her up, there was food and drink. The lights in the warehouse were turned on 24 hours a day, so it wasn't dark. It was just that staying here alone was really boring. In the army and prison, being locked up in a small dark room was a very heavy punishment. Zhang Hai's place should be considered a big dark room. But this woman was obviously trained. In this small room, she didn't do anything extreme. Instead, she was very calm. "You're back." Seeing Zhang Hai enter the warehouse, the woman raised her head and looked at Zhang Hai indifferently. "You're very calm. Are you used to living here?" Looking at the woman's appearance, Zhang Hai chuckled. He put the things he brought in next to the iron cage, then picked up a chair and sat outside the iron cage. He said with a playful face, "I originally came to the United States to escape from my original organization. Here, in addition to no freedom, you have food and drink. And most importantly, it's very safe. So I have nothing to complain about. But if you can send me a few books, I will be very grateful." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, the woman said indifferently, "She originally came here to escape. Zhang Hai can give her a safe place to live. She doesn't have to worry about food and drink. Naturally, she doesn't care. As for the problem of loneliness, a professionally trained person like her doesn't care. Well, I will bring you some books when I come back next time. What do you want to read?" Hearing the woman's words, Zhang Hai shook his head. This woman is really straightforward, but Zhang Hai doesn't care. Before Zhang Hai decides how to deal with her, let her stay here. "Thank you in advance. I want Twilight. If possible, please give me a few more Secret Garden books and pencils." Looking at Zhang Hai, the woman said with a serious face. But after hearing what she wants, Zhang Hai couldn't help but laugh. Originally, he thought that this woman was a cold-blooded killer. A cold-blooded killer shouldn't want to read these things. He didn't expect this woman to have a young girl's heart. "Don't look at me like that. After all, I am only 21 years old this year." Looking at Zhang Hai's expression, Azalina Vicarborio shrugged and said with a calm face. To be honest, seeing her suddenly reminded him that she was just in her early 20s. Because Azalina has been trained before and received missions, her skin, face, and so on are more mature than people of the same age. When Zhang Hai saw her for the first time, he thought that she was about the same age as him. But he didn't expect her to be so much younger than him. Hearing her request, Zhang Hai just nodded and left. Back home, Zhang Hai packed up and drove his car to the town. At 10 o'clock in the morning, they still have to sign the contract at the town hall. This is a big deal for Zhang Hai. Zhang Hai invested in 3 projects this time: a seaside villa, a gun shop, and a souvenir street. The estimated cost is about $250 million, but once it is built, the profits will be considerable. Zhang Hai naturally won't make a loss. If the tourist flow of Winthrop is maintained at 100,000 a year, Zhang Hai estimates that he can make more than $30 million. After deducting taxes, he can make back his capital in about 20 years. Then it will be pure profit. But if it is $1 million a year, then he can make back his capital in 2 years. Of course, $1 million is just an idea. Winthrop is located on the East Coast, which isn't a very good location. That's because the local tycoons prefer to play on the West Coast, which is closer to California. The East Coast is too far away for them. According to Moses Adams and the townspeople, the tourists here are mainly Americans and Europeans. But Zhang Hai doesn't think so.
There's always a voice in his heart that tells him that his country will definitely help him a lot in this regard.
So, Zhang Hai doesn't hesitate to fork out $250 million.
After arriving at the town hall, Zhang Hai signs the contract with the mayor and the town's representative. Under the gaze of Moses Adams and the town's representative lawyer, Zhang Hai signs his name on several contracts. Then, Zhang Hai directly transfers $100 million to the town's finances. Zhang Hai's obligation in the contract is only to fork out the money and take care of the profits. As for the rest, from construction to operation, Zhang Hai himself doesn't care, but he has the responsibility to supervise. Americans are different from Chinese. Chinese like to talk about these things at the big dinner table, but Americans don't like to. After Zhang Hai transferred the money, the townspeople have already started to move. In their eyes, things like celebration banquets are meaningless. Right now, the most important thing is to make money as soon as possible. Looking at the busy people, Zhang Hai has been here for many months after all. He is very clear about the efficiency of the people here, so he just shrugs and leaves with Moses Adams. After the two of them went to have lunch, Zhang Hai transferred $10 million to him. This is his commission. Moses Adams is extremely excited about this money. At the same time, he is even more certain that as long as he works for Zhang Hai will definitely treat him well. Moses Adams didn't say too many nice words, nor did he show any loyalty. He knows that Zhang Hai isn't someone who listens to these words. After lunch, he hurried back to Boston. But this time, he will be back soon, because his focus has completely shifted to Zhang Hai. Compared to a person who can give him tens of millions of dollars in commission at any time, it's better not to take those small cases in Boston. But if he serves Zhang Hai well, he believes that he will definitely earn more than before.
Chapter 374. Hey boss, you're here. Let's go, we're going to catch a mountain lion today. Belle Lester looked at Zhang Hai, who was sitting on the lawn in front of the mansion. He was half lying on a recliner and reading a book. Belle Lester walked over and said with a smile, "Today? Okay, wait for me, I'll get the gun." Hearing Belle's words, Zhang Hai also smiled.
After putting the page he was reading in a corner, he stood up, stretched, and whistled at the little guys who were still playing in the distance.
Goldie and Xiao Bai are the main force to catch a mountain lion.
When the two dogs heard the whistle and rushed over, Zhang Hai had already entered the house and took out his gun from the room on the second floor. Compared to other people, Zhang Hai doesn't like Remington's shotgun very much. He still prefers his August and Desert Eagle. Maybe this is also deeply influenced by his past playing Counter-Strike. Although the 22 and 21 are very strong, not many people use this gun. After filling the two guns with bullets, Zhang Hai also went downstairs. When he came down, Goldie and Xiao Bai have been waiting for a long time. As for Chirp and Dai Fong, a bird of prey and a squirrel is not a good combination, so they stayed at home. Seeing Zhang Hai coming over, Goldie and Xiao Bai also followed behind Zhang Hai. "Boss, you read this kind of book?" Seeing Zhang Hai coming over with the two dogs, Belle couldn't help but raise the book he was reading just now and asked with some surprise. Hearing his words, Zhang Hai couldn't help but smile awkwardly. "Oh, I have nothing to do, so I flipped through it."
Indeed, the previous Zhang Hai really didn't have a good impression of these books. This was all an accident. The book that Zhang Hai was reading was none other than the second book of Twilight that Azalina Vicabrio had bought for him. On that day, after Zhang Hai went to sign the contract, there was a bookstore opposite the place where he and Moses Adams had dinner. When Moses Adams went back to Boston to pack up his things, Zhang Hai had already gone to the bookstore and bought what he wanted. However, when he left the town, he accidentally encountered a car accident.
Of course, it was not his car that was hit, but because the people in the town contacted many engineering teams to build these things, and these engineering teams had accidents.
The driveway in the United States is not very wide. A big car stopped there, blocking the driveway, and it takes time to disperse it. The protagonist, because he was bored, picked up a book and started reading it. She did not expect that she would really fall in love with it. Twilight was a horror romance novel written by the American writer Stephen Meyer. Of course, the horror was secondary. Zhang Hai really didn't see the horror in this thing. Romance is actually the main theme of this book. So far, there are a total of 5 novels: Twilight, New Moon,
eclipse, daybreak, and midnight sunshine. Among them, Midnight Sunshine told the story of Twilight from the perspective of the male lead. It was up to him whether he wanted to read it or not. The main storyline of these 4 books is about a love story between a human and a vampire. At the beginning of Twilight, the protagonist's name was Bella Swan. She was a 17-year-old high school student. Her father was a policeman and her mother divorced. She followed her father to a small town called Forks. When she was in school, she met the vampire Edward Cullen. The origin of vampires and werewolves is said in the book to be because of a certain plague in ancient Europe. In the last village, only a man named Corvinus survived. Later this guy had 3 children. One of them was bitten by a bat that was infected with the plague, another was bitten by a wolf that was infected with the plague, and the last one was a human. These were the ancestors of humans, vampires, and werewolves. The setting of the story was very nonsensical, but also very simple. It is very in line with the aesthetic view of the Americans. The plot and back of the story are not very big, but very delicate. The main storyline of Twilight is that Bella was chased by a vampire named James. In the end, Edward killed James and the story was over. The main storyline of the second book, New Moon, is that Bella fell in love with Edward and wanted to integrate into his world. As a result, at a birthday party, Bella bled out and almost caused a riot. In order not to hurt the girl, Edward took his family and left. The second male lead, Jacob, the werewolf, appeared and played the role of the spare tire perfectly. In the end, Edward's sister came, and the female lead ran away. The third book, Eclipse, is about the male and female lead finally being together. At this time, they are about to graduate from high school. The sister of James, who died in the first book, came back to take revenge. In the end, Jacob and Edward led their family to defeat this woman. Now Xueqi is reading the 4th book, which is also the end of the story. Bella and Edward are married and pregnant. Bella wants to become a vampire, but Edward doesn't agree. There is also a rival family who wants to take advantage of the ban on humans and vampires to kill the Cullen family. In the end, they don't succeed. At least, it is a happy ending. The story is very simple and not too complicated. It is not too hard to think about. Xueqi is quite happy reading it these days. This also made Azalina a little speechless. Wasn't she the one who wanted to read it first? In any case, Xueqi is now almost done with the 4th book. Suddenly, he found that the books on the foreign sales list are quite interesting. After reading these things, he is ready to read Lord of the Rings and the Chronicles of Narnia. These 2 books, together with Harry Potter, are known as the 3 mountains of fantasy novels in the Western world. Xueqi is really curious. He had never read any of these 3 books in China before. He had only watched the first part of the Chronicles of Narnia and the first part of the Harry Potter series. He had never read any of the other books. Now that he was bored, he could make up for it. After packing up, Xueqi and Belle drove the 4-wheeled motorcycle to the periphery of the forest in his manor. At this time, it is already the end of May. It is almost June, and the weather has officially entered summer. Everywhere is lush. The sun is bright, the grass is long, and eagles are flying. Looking at the pasture by the roadside and the small flowers blooming in the middle, Xueqi also felt a breath of nature. The grass in Xueqi's manor is different from the wild grass outside. These grasses are all pasture, and pasture is also different. Pasture is just a general term. There are many kinds of pasture. Different things are fed, so naturally the species is different. For example, if you raise geese and chickens, you have to feed chicory and alfalfa. Alfalfa is the clover. If Xueqi did not raise them, he would not know. There are also pennisetum, Mexican corn, rumex, and so on. If you raise rabbits, in addition to the grass above, rye and timothy are also good. If you raise fish, you have to use Mexican corn, Gordon grass, Sudan grass, pennisetum, alfalfa, and rye. But then again, Americans basically do not raise fish. They do not raise sea fish, and they do not eat river fish. There is no need to raise them. For pigs, cattle, and sheep, the first choice is pennisetum. Alfalfa is alfalfa, which grows taller. There are also chicory, rumex, rye, Mexican corn, Gordon grass, and Gordon grass. Only these are suitable. In Xueqi's manor, there are no special pasture plants. Most of them were left by the previous owner, so the area is also a little mixed. Most of the pasture is alfalfa. There are also some pennisedum and Gordon grass, but alfalfa is the most abundant. In addition, there are some chicory. The others are not in large patches. Under the nourishment of spiritual energy, they grow quite well. The four-leaf clover, which represents luck in other places, is abundant in Zhonghai's manor. There seem to be fewer three-leaf clovers than four-leaf clovers. In addition to four-leaf clovers, there are five-leaf clovers, six-leaf clovers, seven-leaf clovers, and eight-leaf clovers. In the middle of these pasture plants, there are some saffron seeds that Zhonghai specially bought. Saffron's scientific name is saffron. It is the most precious spice in the world. However, although this medicinal material is known as Tibetan, in fact, the Tibetan area on the west side of Huaxia does not produce this thing. The largest production base of this thing is actually near Shanghai. It is also not a native medicine of Huaxia. It was first artificially cultivated in Greece. It is mainly distributed in Europe and the Mediterranean area. It was only introduced to China in the Ming Dynasty. Now, there are many more planted areas in Europe than in China. More than 90% of the saffron in China is actually produced in Shanghai. When Zhonghai first learned about this, he was a little confused, but this is indeed the truth. Zhonghai planted this thing here, not to sell it for money, but to feed it to the cows. It seems that the effect is not bad. Along the way, the two quickly reached the periphery of the forest. There are many benefits to being by the sea. It is not cold in winter, and it is not hot in summer. There is sunshine, beaches, seafood, everything, but the only problem is that summer is too difficult. It is not because of the heat, but because the wind is too strong in summer. The Boston area is located on the Atlantic Ocean. In winter, there will be snowstorms. In summer, there will be torrential rain. There will also be typhoons and tornadoes. Even when there is no torrential rain or typhoon, the wind is much stronger than inland areas. Wind speed of force 5 or 6 is actually not very rare. Facing the wind and the sun, Zhonghai and Belle also stopped the car. After they got out of the car, the people who have already arrived gathered. This time, Zhonghai put in a lot of effort to drive away the mountain lions. A total of 6 people came. In addition to Zhonghai and Belle Lester, there are 2 other people on the Cowboys' side. They are Burke Dollar and Harriman Fells. Robbins Garcia and Philemon Turner have to look after the cowshed. On the other side, 2 fishermen came, Andrew Christian and Eleanor Cece. Edward and Tommy Charles have to prepare the fish food, and Marin Rupert has to fly the plane to patrol. After everyone arrived, everyone checked their weapons. With Zhonghai's order, everyone walked towards the forest. Chapter 375. Boss, pay attention to your feet when you walk. It's summer now. You can't tell what's in the grass. Pull it out with your spear when you walk. Looking at Zhonghai beside him, Belle Lester whispered to him. Hearing what he said, Zhonghai also nodded, indicating that he understood. He used his August to pull out the grass around him. While walking, he observed the situation of this small forest. Boss, I'll lead the way. Seeing Zhonghai's cautiousness, Harriman Fells behind him couldn't help laughing. Harriman Fells actually didn't talk much with Zhonghai. Because this person had some problems with his intelligence, when he spoke, he would often speak half a beat slower. That is to say, when he is talking to you, he suddenly disconnects and becomes silent. Then it may take an hour or 2 before he remembers, but by this time, the person talking to him has already left. It was precisely because of this relationship that he didn't have a good life in the town. However, he really loved and respected Zhonghai because Zhonghai gave him food and shelter, and also gave him a bonus. At the same time, Zhonghai was also very willing to accept him like his colleagues. This made Harriman have a very good impression of Zhonghai. Although he usually didn't show it, to be honest, he was the most active and serious person here. This didn't mean that others weren't serious, but after they finished what they should do, even if they took the initiative to do something, it wouldn't be too much. But he really cared about the grass and trees here. The most famous thing was that whenever Zhonghai's cows were about to give birth, Harriman would go and watch them at night. Although Zhonghai didn't say these things clearly, he knew it. Every month, Harriman received the most bonuses from Zhonghai's cowboys, but no one was jealous of him. Instead, they were very happy for him. They were happy that he found a good job, and they were happy that he had a good boss. Usually, he did the most tiring and troublesome work, cleaning up the cow dung, but he didn't complain. Now that he heard that there was danger in the grass ahead, he took the initiative to come forward and help. However, Zhang Hai waved his hand to stop him. Because of Harriman's identity, he was the only one who didn't have a gun among the 6. Because the gun seller didn't know if he would be a threat to the people around him after he took a gun. So today, he only took a huge machete, which was originally custom-made by Zhang Hai. In the United States, guns were allowed, but the management of cold weapons was extremely strict. Not to mention crossbows, even swords, knives and daggers. If you dared to take them out on the street, the police would investigate you. After Zhang Hai came, he bought some outdoor cold weapons, but they were all placed at home as decorations. For example, some bows and arrows or some equipment from the game. Especially when Zhang Hai had the financial resources and found that he only needed to order these things online, he was even happier. Although he couldn't take them out, it was good to put them at home. Occasionally, he could take them out to show off. So there were a lot of these things hanging on the wall of his corridor, most of which were from the game. For example, the most famous one, Frostmourne, of course, had no magic. It was just an ordinary big sword. There were also Azanatha's double blades, Thunder's Fury, Quell Sarah, and so on. The original version of the sword in Harriman's hand was the Fallen Ashbringer. Naturally, it didn't have the flash effect of the original version, but it was really good looking. This big sword was originally Zhang Hai's, but once he organized a party at home. After Harriman took a fancy to it, Zhang Hai gave this big sword to him. After he polished it with a machine, it really looked good when he carried it on his back. At least in Zhang Hai's view, it was quite scary. At least, it scared him. It's okay, you don't have to worry about me. If I can't solve the problem, you can't solve it either. Patting Harriman on the shoulder, Zhang Hai said with a smile. Harriman looked at Zhang Hai in front of him, who was half a head shorter than him, and couldn't help but nod a little woodenly. He had fought with Zhang Hai before. Of course, it was just for fun, but he knew very well that Zhang Hai was much stronger than him. Seeing that Harriman didn't speak, Zhang Hai continued to walk forward, and the others who followed him also looked around vigilantly. Zhang Hai's group of 6 had all kinds of things. For example, Zhang Hai had a spear, a big desert eagle, and Belle had a spear, a handgun, and a pistol. As for the 3 old men, they had all kinds of equipment. Burke Dollar had a double-barreled shotgun, a cowboy hat that he wouldn't take off no matter how hot it was, and a smoking pipe in his mouth. He looked like an old ruffian. This guy had always been quiet, but Zhang Hai heard that he was very happy recently. Because Zhang Hai had split the money last time, he paid all the alimony he owed his daughter in one go, which surprised his ex-wife and daughter. Later, his daughter learned from Moses Adams that her father could really make a lot of money with Zhang Hai, and the relationship between the family gradually eased. The reason why they were so hostile to him was mainly because they expected better from him. Although not all places in the world were filled with money. However, it was undeniable that there were too many people who judged a person's ability based on their net worth. This was especially true in the United States, where money was more important than relationships. As for Eleanor Cece and Andrew Christian, who were walking at the back, the weapons they used were more conventional. They used the most common Remington, which was the weapon with the highest civilian sales in the United States. This kind of weapon didn't require too much training, because the bullets used were different, and the effect would be different. If it was a shotgun, it would hit a large area. Not only was it powerful, but the effect was also not bad. It could also be used for self-defense. Fishermen liked to use this kind of weapon because it was very effective against sharks in the sea. Of course, in the sea, the scariest thing was not sharks, but people. This was something that everyone who had been out to sea knew. This time, they were hunting mountain lions. To be honest, it was easier for these two to catch sharks than mountain lions. Therefore, they were more or less worried. When they were worried, they would be nervous. When they were nervous, they would stop talking. Therefore, after Zhang Hai and Harriman's conversation ended, the whole team was silent again. The only thing that entered Zhang Hai's ears was the sound of the wind blowing the leaves and grass, and the chirping of birds in the distance. Even the insects might have felt the murderous aura from the 6 people and chose to shut up at this time. The 6 people gradually moved inside and saw more animals. The first to bear the brunt was the animal that lived at the bottom of the food chain, the wild rabbit. As Zhang Hai and the others moved forward, they saw many rabbits flash by. If it wasn't for the mountain lion hunt, Jiang Hai really wanted to kill a few. In Jiang Hai's manner, rabbits were not a disaster. However, there were definitely a lot of them, at least dozens of times more than cows. On the grassland, there were many rabbit holes. Sometimes, when Xiao Bai and Little Huang were not full or wanted to play, they would catch rabbits on the grassland. He even caught it and gave it to Jiang Hai to eat. However, wild rabbits don't taste good. Domesticated rabbits don't have any taste. Therefore, whatever it was made with, it would taste the same. Plus, it was marinated with pepper and starch, chicken soup, mountain delicacies, and so on. The taste was quite good. Basha's famous dish, Bashu rammed rabbit, and dried rabbit meat pot, which was quite famous. It cured a lot of people who don't eat rabbit meat, but wild rabbits don't taste very good. This was because they were born with a smell of game, which was the smell of soil. Other game, other than the smell of soil, also had its own smell. However, rabbits had no smell. This kind of rabbit had a pure soil smell, and it was not delicious to cook. It would only taste good if it was marinated for a long time to get rid of the soil smell. However, the problem was that it was troublesome to cook. Therefore, although Jiang Hai's rabbits were very round, Jiang Hai had no love for this kind of rabbit. However, just because he did not like it, it did not mean that others did not like it. For example, Jiang Hai's Little Huang, Xiao Bai, and the many cattle dogs he raised were all die-hard fans of these rabbits, especially the target that Jiang Hai wanted to catch this time. If not for these rabbits, he would not have come. However, before Jiang Hai got rid of the soil smell of these rabbits, it was unlikely that he would come to catch them. Compared to rabbits, there was another kind of game that Jiang Hai liked to eat. That was pheasant. In fact, wyverns were also a kind of pheasant. However, Jiang Hai was talking about proper pheasants. There were many pheasants in this forest. The lean meat on their bodies was more than the fat, but the most important thing was that there was oil in the lean meat. After being cooked, the meat was very firm and not dry, and it was very fragrant. However, these pheasants needed to be more careful. Their brains did not allow them to go to places where there were no trees, so they did not move outside of the forest. This made many people lose the opportunity to eat them. However, for Jiang Hai, it did not matter because he could go in and catch them at any time. Since they walked into the forest, rabbits and pheasants were the things they saw the most. Chapter 376. To be honest, with Jiang Hai's nourishment of spiritual energy, the mountain lion was not the only animal attracted. Jiang Hai's manor was not far from the Alabama mountains. Although it was not close, some small animals with a large territory had already regarded Jiang Hai's manor as their home. Entering the forest, when Jiang Hai came here last winter, besides some birds, turkeys, rabbits, pheasants, and some small squirrels, there were almost no other creatures here. But this year, when Jiang Hai came again, there were more and more creatures, especially small animals. In addition to the insects that would disappear in the winter, there were also a large number of amphibians, a variety of birds, even snakes and lizards. There were a lot of them here. Although there were no large greenhorns, according to Jiang Hai's estimation, if there were no fences, it wouldn't be long before this place became a protected wildlife area in the Alabama mountains. Jiang Hai did not dislike animals. He liked animals very much. On one hand, he liked to eat them. On the other hand, he also liked small animals. He liked small cats, small dogs, and large beasts. Looking at the lively scene in front of him, Jiang Hai was very pleased. The group walked slowly into the forest. In addition to Jiang Hai, Belle, who was walking side by side with Jiang Hai, had been observing the surrounding situation. If there was any trouble, he would react immediately. Jiang Hai's forest was not big. It was only about 100 acres. According to the rules, 1 acre was equal to 15 mu, and 1 acre was equal to 666 square meters. Jiang Hai's forest was about 1 million square meters, which was about 1 square kilometer. According to the domestic calculation, it was about 2 bus stops horizontally and 2 bus stops vertically. In fact, it was not very big. However, Jiang Hai's forest was not very wide. It was only about 300 meters wide, and the rest was long. The original purpose of this forest was to protect the grassland and buildings in the manor from storms and snowstorms. Therefore, half a circle was planted along the sea. After more than 10 years of development, the forest had grown. The trees had grown into towering trees. There were also many small trees that were slowly growing. They were already more than one size bigger than before. If he were to measure it now, the area occupied by these trees might be even larger. However, Zhang Hai did not care. Having more trees was a good thing for him. Of course, these trees were also Zhang Hai's private property. If one day he did not like them, he could cut them down. They were all his property. Boss, be careful. Just when Zhang Hai was sighing with emotion about the rich species here, Belle, who was walking in front of him, suddenly pulled Zhang Hai. This shocked Zhang Hai, and then he began to look around. But after looking around, he did not find any threat. He couldn't help but look at Belle strangely. Feeling Zhang Hai's gaze, Belle pointed in front of Zhang Hai. Looking at the direction of his finger, Zhang Hai found that about 1 meter in front of him, there was a spider web hanging above his head. At this time, there were many small cocoons on the spider's web. These were not eggs that were hatching, but insects that were wrapped in cocoons. They were also the spider's dinner. As for the owner of this web, it was hanging in a corner of the web, motionless. Damn, a spider. Looking at this guy, Zhang Hai couldn't help but whisper. This spider didn't look big, about 2 centimeters, less than 3 centimeters. Its body was dark, but there was a little red behind its buttocks. This is a black widow, a very common spider in the United States. It is the most poisonous of all spiders. But boss, you don't have to worry about it. The toxicity of this spider is not much of a threat to humans. Except for the elderly, children, and the sick, ordinary people will only feel a lot of pain when bitten. Basically, there is no danger to their life. Seeing Zhang Hai's shocked look, Belle also smiled and said, "They have dealt with these little guys all year round. Black Widow is not fatal?" Hearing Belle's words, Zhang Hai felt a little incredulous. He always heard that after being bitten by a black widow, something will happen. Now someone suddenly told him that this thing is not fatal. It's really hard for him to believe. We often ambush in the wild, and being bitten by this kind of thing has become a habit. To be honest, the pain of this thing is really not small, so it's better for us to avoid it. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Belle also smiled and led Zhang Hai to avoid this spider web. Black Widow is not fatal. Then is there anything fatal in this forest? Although Zhang Hai took a detour, he was still very curious. He looked at Belle and asked. After Belle heard Zhang Hai's words, he also looked around. That thing is more fatal. Pointing to the distance, Belle said to Zhang Hai lightly. Zhang Hai looked around and found that the place he pointed to was a huge beehive. Zhang Hai really didn't notice it when he came here last time. When did such a big beehive form here? A beehive means that there is honey here. I guess the wild honey inside will taste good. Looking at the beehive in front of him, Zhang Hai whispered, but after listening to his words, not only Belle looked at him in amusement, even Burkdala behind him, Eleanor Cece, and Andrew Christian looked at him with a smile. Only Harriman Fells was still firm. Boss, that thing can't be provoked. That is a killer bee. In the end, it was Belle who told Zhang Hai. The so-called killer bees are also called African bees. They are divided into 2 kinds, honeybees and wasps. Honeybees are actually similar to ordinary bees, but they have a violent temper and extremely strong combat power, while wasps eat other pests and bees. They can be regarded as the guardians of the forest. Among these bees, the most threatening one is the hybrid version of European and African bees. This kind of bee is the largest, with the strongest attack power, stronger vitality, and amazing combat power. According to records, in the past few decades, hundreds of people have been stung to death by this kind of bee, and countless cats and dogs have died unnatural deaths. Other than adult bears that can compete with them, other creatures have to run away when they see them. The grass on Zhang Hai's grassland is very good, and the flowers that grow naturally are also very good. They produce a lot of honey and are rich in nutrients. Because of the nutrition, Zhang Hai's beehive, which was originally not very special, has become a lot bigger this year. Compared to the Black Widow, the killer bee is much more powerful. Of course, this is something that Zhang Hai just found out. In North America, there are 12 King Kong, representing 12 kinds of animals. Although it is not like Australia, where poisonous animals are everywhere, there are naturally many poisonous animals here. The killer bee is ranked first, the rattlesnake is ranked 2nd, the Gila lizard is ranked 3rd, the black widow is ranked 4th, the alligator is ranked 5th, and there are cottonmouth snakes, tiger sharks, cougars, spotted rattlesnakes, brown bears, and so on. These things are not particularly threatening to humans, but the premise is that humans do not provoke them. Looking at Jiang Hai's curious look, Belle also smiled and explained to him. But halfway through, Harriman Ferns, who was behind them, suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed the 2 men. Just when the 2 men were surprised, they found that everyone behind them squatted down. At the same time, Burke Dahlia pointed to the distance. Following the direction he pointed, Jiang Hai and Belle also squatted down and looked in that direction. Their eyes couldn't help but light up, because at this time, in the forest clearing in the distance, their target had appeared. But what's not right is that Jiang Hai's target was only 1 mountain lion, but now it has become 6. The biggest one, which was also the one that Jiang Hai once fought, was lying under the sun and taking a nap. Beside it, there were 5 little guys that looked very small. They were playing around it, and in the center of their play there was a creature. Jiang Hai also knew this creature. It was the armadillo known as the American pangolin. At this time, it was curled up into a ball. The shell of this creature could bounce off bullets, not to mention the claws and teeth of a lion. The female mountain lion probably knew that she couldn't do anything to this guy, so she let her children play with this guy as a toy. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai and the others couldn't help but look at each other. Then they all looked at Jiang Hai, because they didn't know what to do next. Should they continue or go to the Animal Conservation Center and take these little guys away? To be honest, Jiang Hai was also a little hesitant, because these little guys are quite cute. But after all, these guys were ferocious beasts. If they grew up and attacked his family, it would be troublesome. However, chasing them away like this was quite troublesome. He never expected that the female mountain lion, who was still alone the last time he saw her, would give birth so quickly. Furthermore, she gave birth to 5 cubs. Mountain lions could only give birth to 6 cubs at most. This fellow was really impressive. She gave birth to 5 cubs by herself. Most importantly, these 5 cubs looked pretty good. Just as Jiang Hai was a little hesitant about this, thinking about whether to chase them away himself or inform the protection center, the female mountain lion suddenly stood up. Suddenly, the lioness stood up and stared at the surroundings. Seeing this scene, Jiang Hai and the others were startled. They thought that they had been exposed. Just as Jiang Hai was about to attack, a loud cry came from the bushes on their side. Then a huge wild boar came running from the bushes in the distance. When he saw this guy, Jiang Hai was also shocked because there were no wild boars in this forest. What's going on with this wild boar? In fact, what Jiang Hai didn't know was that most animals can swim, including wild boars. Since the mountain lion could swim to Jiang Hai, it was naturally possible for wild boars to do the same. If Jiang Hai looked carefully, there were actually many surprises waiting for him in this small forest. Chapter 377. Humans were very contradictory creatures. For example, humans always claimed that all creatures were equal and that nature was sovereign. But they also said that the train ran fast because of the front of the train. A snake could not function without a head. Of course, everyone had their own reasons. There was nothing much to say. Humans liked to rank humans. Who was the boss, the second, the third, the fourth, and so on. There was not only a ranking based on age, but also a ranking based on ability. For example, the famous Liangshan Lake. Back then, he and Zhu Tai. He seemed to have made a mistake. Anyway, humans liked to rank things. There was no first place in literature and no second place in martial arts. Everything had its own strengths and weaknesses. Animals were humans' neighbors on this planet, so they naturally liked to arrange seats for these animals. Hua Xia's old driver once said that there were 1 pig, 2 bears, and 3 tigers in the forest. Of course, this did not mean that wild boars were more powerful than bears and tigers. It was just that such creatures were the biggest threat to other creatures in the forest, or in the natural world. Because pigs were really stupid. Someone once said, "No, pigs are actually very smart." That was referring to domesticated pigs as well as pet hunters. Real wild boars were really stupid. Other animals were very vigilant and knew to run when they encountered danger. However, the wild boar would not do that. Once it encountered danger, the wild boar's first reaction would be to see if it could beat it. especially an adult wild boar with a large body. That was truly not an ordinary cannon. In the natural world, wild boars had almost no natural enemies. The creatures that mainly ate wild boars were large carnivorous creatures such as tigers and lions. But in North America these things did not exist. The largest carnivorous creature in North America was the jaguar, also known as the jaguar. It was basically about the size of a leopard. How could a leopard be useful against a wild boar? Naturally, mountain lions were useless. And the North American gray wolf, which was a huge threat to wild boars, had long been extinct. As for bears, to be honest, it was unknown whether they could beat a wild boar. Most importantly, they couldn't outrun a wild boar. Therefore, wild boars were really a local tyrant in North America. In addition, hunting wild animals in the United States, including wild boars, required a hunting license, except for people like Zhang Hai who had his own manor. Hunting animals for no reason would lead to imprisonment, which made wild boars quite bold. Not only did they dominate the forest, they even dared to attack human cars and homes. When the wild boar was full of confidence, it would often take the initiative to attack other animals or humans. It was really bold. Just like now, the wild boar had wandered into Zhang Hai's manor for some unknown reason. Now that it saw the mountain lion, it instantly launched an attack. However, the mountain lion was not to be trifled with. It had obviously fought with this guy before. Seeing the wild boar rushing over, the mountain lion quickly reacted. It jumped up immediately, turned its body inconceivably in the air, and dodged the wild boar's first attack. The wild boar mainly used two methods to fight. One was to hit, and the other was to bite. If it hit, it would use its powerful impact like a tank to hit straight at the opponent. Then, it would use the big teeth on its head to tear the opponent's skin. As long as it hit, it would probably be over if it wasn't treated in time. The second move was to bite. After landing on the ground, the mountain lion gave a low roar to the 5 little guys behind it. The 5 little guys were very intelligent and quickly ran to hide in the grass in the distance. They didn't want to delay the battle between their mother and the big stupid pig. But coincidentally, this time, the place where they hid turned out to be Zhang Hai's side. As the grass was pushed aside, the 5 little guys in Zhang Hai's group looked at each other. They could clearly see a flash of surprise in Zhang Hai's eyes, and the 5 little guys' eyes also flashed a trace of surprise. Scratch, scratch, scratch. After the surprise, the 5 little guys immediately cried out. Although they had never seen humans before, the feeling engraved in their genes let them know that the humans in front of them were not harmless. Hearing the cries of her children, the mother mountain lion, who was confronting the wild boar, could not help but be stunned. She immediately turned to look at the grass and saw Zhang Hai's group at a glance. A trace of surprise and a trace of fear flashed in her eyes. Because at this moment, she also saw Xiao Bai and Xiao Huang, who caused her injuries. These 2 guys were out-and-out bad guys. Thinking that her children had fallen into the hands of these people and the 2 monsters, the mother mountain lion was also stunned. She turned around and wanted to save her children, but unfortunately, she forgot that there was still an enemy opposite her. Although the wild boar's brain was not very good, it still knew how to seize the opportunity. Seeing that the mountain lion was distracted, it stomped on the ground with its short limbs and rushed over in an instant. Its huge fangs pierced towards the mother mountain lion's stomach. Hearing the sound of hooves stomping on the ground, the mother mountain lion also reacted. By the time she wanted to dodge, it was already too late. Although she jumped up, the wild boar raised its head and its huge fangs instantly pierced into her stomach. Then, with a swing of its head, it threw her far away. With her stomach pierced, the mother mountain lion instantly lost her combat strength and could not help but lie there panting heavily. The wild boar that replaced the mother mountain lion's position also saw Zhang Hai and the others immediately. It had just finished off a lion. Although it was only a mountain lion, this wild boar's confidence reached its limit. It did not care if Zhang Hai and the others had guns or not. It immediately rushed towards Zhang Hai and the others. The wild boar was very fast. Although Zhang Hai and the others had already drawn their guns when they saw it, the effect was not very good. Many of the bullets fired by the panicked Zhang Hai and the others missed that guy. Out of the 5 bullets that Zhang Hai had fired, 3 of them had missed, and 2 of them had hit this guy's body. However, there was a thick layer of mud on the wild boar's body. When the sun shone on it, it was like armor. After most of the impact of the bullets was offset by this layer of mud armor, they could only penetrate the wild boar's skin but could not cause much damage to it. At the same time, in order not to hurt the 5 little guys in front of them, the shotguns behind them were useless. The only one who hit the wild boar's head was Bell, but at such a close distance, his long gun was not good. He used a pistol and the pistol's bullets were not very powerful. Just like that, it was stuck on the wild boar's head. This kind of pain made the wild boar even crazier. It did not give Zhang Hai and the others any chance at all and directly rushed towards them. Seeing this, Halamon, who had been behind Zhang Hai, turned sideways and flashed from Zhang Hai's side. The steel broadsword in his hand had already been swung and smashed heavily towards the wild boar in front of him. With a loud bang, the broadsword and the wild boar's teeth collided. Halamon's strength was not small, but he was still hit by the wild boar and could not help but take 3 steps back. As for the wild boar, it was also a little stunned. Its original momentum could not help but slow down. It stood still and shook its head. This blow also stunned it. At least it had never encountered such a blow before. Seeing this scene, Zhang Hai knew that this was an opportunity. Because the distance between the two was too close, Zhang Hai didn't pull his Desert Eagle. Instead, he took a big stride and jumped into the air. At the same time, he loudly called Harriman's name. When Harriman heard Zhang Hai's words, he knew what Zhang Hai wanted to do. So he instantly threw the broadsword to Zhang Hai. Zhang Hai caught the double-handed broadsword in the air and instantly pressed it down. Cold weapons such as sabers and swords were made of steel. The harder the cold weapon was, the more brittle it was. The more flexible the cold weapon was, the less sharp it was. Zhang Hai did not think about what to do with these cold weapons before. Now was the era of hot weapons. Although these cold weapons were not eliminated, they were almost obsolete. Therefore, his steel materials were all ordinary recovered steel. Their hardness was only 57, but that was enough. The skin of the wild boar, which was difficult to be cut by bullets, was directly cut by the blade when Zhang Hai pressed it down. Along the wild boar's neck, Zhang Hai pressed all the way down and directly cut half of the wild boar's spine. With half of the spine broken, the wild boar's nerves that controlled its body were naturally broken. It fell to the ground and began to twitch. Blood was constantly spurting out. Fortunately, Zhang Hai had already hidden to the side, otherwise, his face would have been sprayed. Looking at the wild boar that had lost its ability to fight and was waiting for death, Zhang Hai heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he turned around and looked at the mountain lion family behind him. At this moment, the 5 little fellows had already run to the female mountain lion's side and could not help but cry out for mercy. However, the female mountain lion had already lost its ability to fight. If the wild boar was doomed, then if the mountain lion did not save it now, it would also be doomed. Although Zhang Hai had always wanted to chase it out of the manor, Zhang Hai had never intended to kill it. But Zhang Hai really didn't want to hurt its life. Of course, if this guy attacked humans or Zhang Hai's cattle and sheep, Zhang Hai wouldn't let it go. Now, looking at it and its 5 little lions, Zhang Hai couldn't help but feel a little moved. Looking at the wild boar that was certain to die, Zhang Hai walked in front of the mountain lion. As soon as he walked over, the 5 little fellows looked at Zhang Hai and bared their teeth as if saying, "You're not allowed to bully my mother." As for the big mountain lion, her eyes were filled with terror and fear. Unfortunately, she could not move now. She could only pant as she watched Zhang Hai squat in front of her. Looking at the mountain lion in front of him, Zhang Hai said, "If you die, they will be orphans." Looking at the mountain lion and the 5 little fellows in front of him, Zhang Hai curled his lips. Sometimes, he hated his personality. Chapter 378. Boss, are you sure you don't want to catch those little guys? You know they're lions too. Seeing Zhang Hai walk out of the forest, Eleanor, Xueqi couldn't help but ask. This is indeed a very troublesome matter. Let's wait until they have the tendency to attack. Hearing his words, Zhang Hai smiled but didn't say much. Because he was confident that these guys wouldn't have any tendency to attack in the future. Just now, Zhang Hai clearly had the opportunity to get rid of the mountain lion family. But looking at their pitiful appearance, Zhang Hai gave up in the end. Sometimes, he's too soft-hearted. But just like what Eleanor Xueqi said, those are lions, so Zhang Hai has to be careful. So before leaving, He injected a stream of spiritual energy into the lioness, and the 5 little lions split the spiritual energy equally. This spiritual energy should be enough to make them recognize him as their master, although it won't be as good as taming dogs. After all, the amount of spiritual energy used was too little. Zhang Hai used more than 20 drops of blood and a lot of spiritual energy to tame Big Fool. This is the difficulty of taming wild animals. Currently, Zhang Hai doesn't want these mountain lions to become his pets. As long as they don't attack people, Zhang Hai can't be bothered. Anyway, the wild rabbits and pheasants in this forest can be caught all year round. Zhang Hai doesn't care. But he also informed Big Fool that in the future, large animals can't be allowed to come to this area. This time it's a mountain lion. Next time it might be a brown bear or a polar bear. Zhang Hai is a little afraid when facing these things. Since Zhang Hai said that he won't care about these mountain lions for the time being, Eleanor, Cece and the others also looked at each other. Although the mountain lions are a little threatening, they don't care because the mountain lions are seriously injured this time. They don't know the magical use of Zhang Hai's spiritual energy, but judging from the scene just now, this mountain lion is doomed. As for the 5 little guys, without their mother, even if they were in Zhang Hai's forest, it would probably be very difficult for them to survive. So they didn't comment on Zhang Hai's pity and left with Zhang Hai. After they left the forest, it seemed that everything in the world was moving forward according to its original trajectory. Time passed minute by minute, the sun rose and set, and everything was happening step by step. Things like the opening of the World Expo, the British general election, and so on had nothing to do with Zhang Hai. As for things related to him, he also paid attention to them. The first was his manner. In late May, Zhang Dihai and the Walmart Group both came to visit. Maybe because of the incident in Atlantic City, Perwalton didn't come in person this time. Instead, she sent her assistant. She was also a beauty, but she wasn't very friendly to Zhang Hai. She completed the handover mechanically with Zhang Hai. The second batch of 2,000 cows was sent to the slaughterhouse, and the 300 cows from Zhang Dihai's side were also sent to the slaughterhouse. Originally, he planned to complete the handover 6 times, but now it seems that 4 times is enough. The only one who hadn't made a move yet was Chile in the capital, but it was useless for Chile to be anxious. The decoration of the Western restaurant was basically completed, but it would take a while to release the flavor, so she had been contacting the air transport company and the warehouse recently. She was also very ambitious about Zhang Hai's beef. Of course, she also knew a little about the relationship between Zhang Hai, Feng Yunchen, and Ai Xiaoxi. But what made her very conflicted was that, just as Feng Yunchen thought, because of Zhang Hai, it was very difficult for her to deal with these 2 women. She really felt a little afraid of shooting the rat for fear of breaking the vases. But no matter what she thought, time was still passing, and she was still busy. She didn't know what would happen between her and Zhang Hai in the future. After the cows were separated and slaughtered, Zhang Hai's account had more than $300 million. There were also a lot fewer cows in the manor, but Zhang Hai's cowboys were very happy, because the cows were really worth a lot of money. Zhang Hai and Xueqi Clive didn't spend a lot of time together recently. Actually, it wasn't that they didn't spend a lot of time together, but that they didn't spend any time together at all. With the development of the town, Xueqi Clive's own standards were still quite good. She was transferred to the town hall by the mayor, and was mainly responsible for the planning and implementation of the tourist guide issue. Winthrop's town hall had also submitted to the state their written opinion on wanting to turn the town into a tourist attraction, as well as the application for the project and the application for the route of the tour group. Of course, the state actually had a lot of ideas about this huge project worth several $100 million, but unfortunately, this was a cooperation between Zhang Hai and the town hall. Unlike in China, the state government and the town government were relatively independent when it came to political issues. Even if they wanted to intervene, they couldn't. This was different from the top to bottom in China. Here they could directly cooperate with the lowest level. This also saved a lot of trouble. Of course, this had nothing to do with Zhang Hai. Although the Massachusetts state government was a little depressed, Winthrop was still their county after all. If a county engaged in tourism, it would be a good thing for them if its GDP increased. Therefore, the things they submitted were all approved. Now, they just had to wait and see what would happen after these things were built. Zhang Hai wasn't a stingy boss. Of course, he wasn't a boss who spent money in vain. He would give the money, But at least he had to know where the details of the money went. He was also the most strict when it came to quality. If the quality wasn't good, he would directly reject the work. He didn't care about any hidden rules or what the foreman did to the materials. He had the right to supervise, and everything was up to him. In addition, Moses Adams was a lawyer who wholeheartedly stood by Jiang Hai's side. He really couldn't tolerate even the slightest bit of sand in his eyes. When the work was just being built, there was once a construction company who changed the steel bars from 3 to 2. Jiang Hai directly refused to use them. Then, he sued, forced the demolition, and found a new construction team to do it again. These people would definitely make money from his project, and they would make a lot of money. If they still wanted to make some extra money, then sorry, they would lose a lot of money. Moses Adams specialized in this kind of work. He wouldn't let these people take advantage of him. Except for the chaos in the beginning, after a few days, after several construction teams and suppliers changed, the construction in Winthrop entered the fastest stage. New streets began to be built, new villas were set up by the sea, new shops began to appear, and a new shooting range was being expanded. Seeing the whole town in full swing, the townspeople were very happy. This was because they knew that as long as this tourist spot was built, regardless of whether Jiang Hai and the town would make money, at least they would have another way to make money. Every day, seeing these workers busy in the town, everyone felt very happy, because it also represented hope. Jiang Hai didn't know whether it was the hope of the townspeople, but after his 6th failed attempt to ask Xueqi out, he was a little disappointed. To be honest, Jiang Hai's feelings for Xueqi were the deepest. It could be said that this girl was the person he liked the most, but liking her was not love, nor was it responsibility. There were no real problems between them, so Jiang Hai and Xueqi were a little uncertain. The closer a relationship was, the more distant it would be if they didn't contact each other for a long time. Jiang Hai felt that Xueqi was not ready to enter his world, but she did have a good impression of him. However, if this continued, who knew? Jiang Hai casually threw his phone on the sofa next to him. He was speechless as he looked at the ceiling. He was sorting out his feelings. At the same time, the faces of those who had a relationship with him and could become his girlfriend also flashed in front of his eyes. The first one that flashed by was Feng Yunchen. Although at the beginning, Jiang Hai and she only dated for one night, after those days, Jiang Hai's feelings seemed to have changed. However, Jiang Hai knew that there would be no result between them, and she didn't want to be his lover yet. The second face that flashed by was Ai Xueqi. Jiang Hai was not very familiar with this girl. She gave him her most precious thing, but she also didn't express her feelings, just like Feng Yunchen. This was also something that Jiang Hai couldn't figure out. After the two girls, it was Xueqi. Then, it was Selena Gomez, who made a mistake that night. After that, Qi Li's face also flashed by, but it was only for a moment before it was chased out of Jiang Hai's mind. For Jiang Hai, when he left home and prepared to fight for his PhD, it was already impossible for him to be with Qi Li. Although the person he knew the most was Qi Li, to be honest, Qi Li's chances were the smallest. At this time, Jiang Hai was no longer as empty as he was a few months ago when he went to town primary school. Now, his heart was filled with many people, many women. In addition to the above people, there were the most important Delina and Marion. There was also Aphrodite, who didn't seem to care about those accidents at all, and the other 9 girls. But after looking around, it seemed that there really wasn't anyone who could stay with him for the rest of his life. I'm really a jinx. He patted his forehead, feeling that he was really a failure of a rich man. In the past, when he read novels and TV series, Jiang Hai didn't know if the rich people, lovers, and so on changed, but at least there was always someone around him. But now, Jiang Hai didn't even have anyone around him. Those who went out to play naturally didn't count. If he had a real girlfriend, he would restrain himself a little. But the problem now was that he didn't even have a real girlfriend. What should Jiang Hai do? No matter how big or small, he was also a billionaire. He couldn't just use little left and right. Just as Jiang Hai was sighing with emotion that the most loyal partner in his life was by his side, a beautiful figure came to his manor. Chapter 379. Ding dong, ding dong, ding dong. Just as Jiang Hai was struggling, the doorbell suddenly rang. This surprised Jiang Hai a little, because it seems that people who often go in and out of his manor know the password of the manor's gate. Of course, no one knows the password of his villa, but the password of the gate is actually not a secret. Even Shenty Clive and Karma Cliff know that Moses Adams has gained Jiang Hai's trust after the Miami incident. At least, he knows the secret of the gate, and people who don't know the password of his gate, generally speaking, will not come to his place. Looking at the time, it's past 2 o'clock in the afternoon. It doesn't seem to be the time to receive guests. But although he was curious, Jiang Hai still stood up. No matter who it is, they will know. Hello, who is this? Picking up the phone in the villa, Jiang Hai looked at the picture recorded by the camera. It's me. In the camera, an Asian face appeared in front of him. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, she said calmly. Hearing this person's words and this person's appearance, Jiang Hai suddenly remembered who she was. Dr. Bernice, please come in, come in. After Jiang Hai said a sentence, he immediately opened the door and walked out of his villa. At this time, outside the villa, Daliana and Marian were playing with their flower field outside the house. When they saw Jiang Hai coming out, they looked at Jiang Hai curiously, their eyes full of questions. Go and wash up. Dr. Bernice is here. Seeing the confusion in the eyes of the two girls, Jiang Hai explained with a smile. As soon as they heard that Bernice was coming, the two girls immediately stood up and ran into the house. For the female doctor who examined them, the two girls still have a good impression of her, so they naturally have to clean up a little. Looking at their flower field, Jiang Hai also showed a gentle smile on his face. Perhaps because of their previous lives, the two girls were somewhat repulsed by the outside world. Even if they were cured now, they were still too similar to normal children. They would absorb all the knowledge that Xueqi Clive taught them. They also understood and accepted new things, but they didn't like them very much. For example, they didn't like the games that children of their age were playing. They also didn't like Facebook, including Twitter and all kinds of things on the internet. They didn't like it. Even the craziest fans of their age didn't like it. It could be said that Jiang Hai couldn't do anything about it. Fearing that the two girls would become autistic, Xueqi Clive had told them to do some extracurricular activities instead of just watching TV or running around the manor all day. After all, they were already big girls now. After the new year, although they had not celebrated their birthdays, according to Hua Xia, these two girls were already 15 years old. Girls in the 3rd grade of middle school were naturally considered big girls. Just as Jiang Hai was thinking about how to cultivate their extracurricular interests, they found a job of their own, which was planting flowers. At first, they just planted some ordinary plants, such as cacti, aloe, and so on. However, now they already knew how to use their pocket money to buy beautiful flowers online. The place where they were going to plant flowers was about 1 mu of land. This flower field was well taken care of by the two girls. There were all kinds of flowers in it. Although it was planted a little late, the growth was still very good. Now, many of them had already sprouted. Just as Jiang Hai was observing the garden, Penny came over from afar. Compared to the last time Jiang Hai saw her, when she was wearing a white coat, she was much more easygoing this time. Bernice is not ugly. She can be said to be very good-looking, comparable to Qili. Moreover, her character reminds Jiang Hai of the woman who gave him a headache. Even the taste of clothes is not much different between the two of them. Penny also liked to wear tough women's clothes. For example, she was wearing a white lace shirt on her upper body. Her lower body was a pair of ordinary jeans and a pair of ordinary sneakers. Her hair was neatly tied behind her head. Carrying a suitcase, she walked in just like that. It was simple, but revealed a sense of freedom and handsomeness. Welcome, welcome. Why didn't you tell me you were coming? I'll pick you up at the airport. Seeing Penny coming over, Jiang Hai immediately greeted her with a smile and said with a serious face. He owed this woman a favor, so naturally, he had to please her. Is this your manner? The environment is really good. But unfortunately, his warm face seemed to be stuck to Penny's cold butt. Penny did not appreciate Jiang Hai's enthusiasm. She ignored Jiang Hai's hand that reached over to help her carry the suitcase. At the same time, she looked around and said indifferently, Ugh, here it is. This is the residential area, that is the winery, then the cowshed and the grazing area, and a little further away is the fishing ground. We have a big beach here. If you have nothing to do, you can go and play. Hearing Penny's words, Jiang Hai also took back his hand, although he really wanted to leave without this girl. She was a guest, so Zhang Hai temporarily suppressed the dissatisfaction in his heart and introduced his manner. Sorry, I usually only concentrate on research. I came to the United States when I was 16 years old and have been studying. I don't have many friends. Xueqi Clive is one of my few friends, so I don't know much about human affairs. If I offended you in any way, please forgive me. Maybe she heard the stiffness in Zhang Hai's words and the embarrassment on his face. Penny was stunned for a moment, then said to Zhang Hai faintly. Hearing her explanation, although Zhang Hai was still a little speechless, at least the other party explained it, so he felt better in his heart. No longer caring about her, Zhang Hai directly led her into his villa. As soon as he walked through the door of the villa, he saw Daliana and Marian running in from upstairs. Seeing Penny, the two stood respectfully beside her. Hello, this is a gift for you. Seeing Daliana and Marian, Penny forced a smile on her face. Then she opened her bag and took out a stack of bracelets from it. She picked 2 pink bracelets and handed them to the 2 girls. After receiving the bracelets, the 2 girls were a little confused. What's the use of this thing? This is something that our research institute has just developed. It is still a sample and has not been put on the market. This bracelet has electromagnetism and a miniature intelligent small head inside. The whole bracelet is made of pure silver. Not only can it sterilize, but it can also promote blood circulation. Not only can it make calls and record steps, but it can also monitor your heart and lung functions, the quality of your sleep at night, and so on. It is very useful. Looking at the 2 girls' strange faces, Penny also explained to them. Of course, at the same time, she did not forget to give one to Zhang Hai. Zhang Hai didn't expect that he would also have this thing. Holding it in his hand, Zhang Hai couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. Zhang Hai didn't know if this bracelet had the same effect as Bernice said. But when he picked up the bracelet, he felt as if he was drinking tea. The speed at which he absorbed spiritual energy from the outside world slowly increased. It's really useful? Looking at the bracelet in front of him, Zhang Hai couldn't help but mutter in a low voice. He didn't know how this thing could increase his speed of absorbing spiritual energy. Was it because of the electromagnetism inside? Or was it because of the silver? But it was unlikely that it was because of the silver. Because Zhang Hai had fished out a lot of silver coins from the deep sea. But even when he was about to sleep, there was no other effect. Was it because of the electromagnetism? If it was really because of this, then Zhang Hai would have to think about it carefully. He would ask Penny about the electromagnetism and whether she could make a big one. This way, his leveling speed would be faster. In fact, to put it bluntly, Zhang Hai's current life was mainly about enjoyment. This was because he didn't have much to strive for. He didn't have much ambition. His manner and his own ability could guarantee that he would live well in this world. Although some people said that a person without dreams was no different from a salted fish. But as far as the current situation was concerned, Zhang Hai really didn't have any dreams. He just wanted to enjoy his life like this. He didn't have any ambition to become the world's livestock king. He also didn't intend to enter real estate or IT. He just wanted to make money steadily. This was the way of the king. Now, the only obsession in his heart was the problem of leveling up. This problem had been pressing on Zhang Hai's mind for a long time. It was really a bit unbearable for him. In Zhang Hai's view, this problem was even more important than the problem of finding his other half. Thank you. Then Zhang Hai also received the gift. Daliana and Marian also nodded and said thank you. After that, they took the initiative to help Bernice drag her big box in. From today onwards, I will stay with you for a while, and your patient will probably come the day after tomorrow. If it is convenient for you, I will have to trouble you to pick him up. Looking at Zhang Hai, Bernice turned her head and said to him, "Oh, no problem." Hearing her words, Zhang Hai also reacted and said with a smile. This was the agreement between Zhang Hai and Penny. She helped Zhang Hai to show proof, including medical certificates, health certificates, and so on. Don't underestimate these certificates. These things are not difficult to get if you have connections in China. According to Zhang Hai's friends in China, these things can be easily obtained as long as he returns to China. But in the United States, it is quite difficult to get. Chapter 380. The biggest difference between Huaxia and the United States was that in Huaxia, relationships were important. But in the United States, to be honest, relationships were not important. Americans cared more about benefits and relationships, which were not popular in the United States. Tea cools down when people are gone. This was the mainstream in China, and even more so in the United States. Therefore, there was almost no backdoor for medical treatment, taxation, and so on, especially in the medical field. The United States had a very strong national regulation. Some drugs' content could not be lower by even a little bit. It was also very important for medical treatment. All the hospitals in the United States were connected to the internet. You saw a doctor in Miami, and you saw another doctor in Washington. Your previous medical records can be found here. What medicine you took, what symptoms you had, and so on, could all be seen. Therefore, the diagnosis that Bernice made for Zhang Hai was very risky. If she did not do it well, not only would she lose her doctor's license, but even the research institute would be closed down. That was why Zhang Hai said that he owed her a favor. According to her, the condition of this favor was to treat a person for her. According to her, this person was her sister. She had albinism since she was a child. She didn't care how the protagonist cured her. As long as she was cured, it was enough. It could be regarded as returning her favor. She came here first to decorate the room her sister was going to decorate when she came. Zhang Hai naturally didn't have anything against it. After carrying her luggage upstairs, Zhang Hai chatted with her briefly, and then went downstairs to prepare dinner. After all, it was Bernice's first time here, so Zhang Hai prepared a rich dinner. Lobster and beef. This was inevitable. In addition, there were many other delicacies. Basically, when people came to Zhang Hai's place, Zhang Hai would make these things for them to eat. This was his way of treating his guests. At least, he would carefully select the food. After leaving the villa, Zhang Hai drove the four-wheeled motorcycle to the beach. After greeting Edward Anderson there, he went to the sea and caught 2 big lobsters. After that, Zhang Hai went back to prepare dinner. When Bernice came downstairs, Zhang Hai's dinner was almost ready. "I can't eat much. You don't have to trouble yourself." Bernice went to the kitchen to see that Zhang Hai was busy. She was a little surprised because Zhang Hai's food was really rich. There were 2 lobsters, one steamed and the other baked with cheese. There were also 2 beef dishes, 1 steak and 1 beef stewed with burgundy wine. There were also some vegetarian dishes. It looked like there was a lot of food, and the taste was definitely not wrong. "It's okay. We ate like this when we were lonely. If we couldn't finish it, we gave it to them." Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai smiled. At the same time, he pointed his chin at Xiao Bai and Goldie, who were squatting not far behind her. When she saw the 2 dogs, Bernice was shocked because she didn't see them when she came in just now. Now that she saw them, her eyes couldn't help but brighten. In fact, Bernice likes dogs, especially big dogs. In her eyes, Xiao Bai and Goldie are very beautiful dogs. She couldn't help but take 2 steps toward them. However, when she stretched out her hand and wanted to touch the 2 little guys, Goldie and Xiao Bai stood up and ran away. They knew that Bernice was Zhang Hai's guest, so they can't attack her. If it were an ordinary person, how could they approach them? They would have already pounced on them. But now they just ran away, that's all. Your dogs are really smart, but it's best for dogs not to eat human food, because it's too salty and too oily. It's not good for their bodies. Generally speaking, dogs have to be fed special dog food. Looking at the 2 dogs running away, Bernice also knew that they didn't welcome her, so she didn't follow them. Instead, she squatted down and looked at the 2 dogs. "Oh, it's okay." In fact, before Zhang Hai raised the dog, he had also heard about this. But after raising the dog, he didn't care about it anymore. The food he fed had spiritual energy in it, so naturally, he wanted to abuse the dog food. "Okay." Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice also shrugged. Since the owner didn't care, then she, as an outsider, shouldn't say more. Looking at the 2 dogs carefully, Bernice became more and more surprised. These 2 dogs were quite strong, their eyes were clear, their hair was unusually soft, and they didn't have any smell. This made her, who has been paying attention to the dogs, couldn't help but feel that these 2 dogs were really well raised by Zhang Hai. If they participate in the competition, it shouldn't be a problem for them to get a ranking. Just as she was engrossed in her observation, Jiang Hai had already served the dishes. Delina, Marian, eat. Dr. Bernice, eat. After shouting upstairs, Jiang Hai also said to Bernice, who was squatting there. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice couldn't help but smile, stood up and walked to the dining room. At this time, Daliana and Marian, who were upstairs, also quickly ran down. After saying a few words to Bernice, they sat in their seats. After Jiang Hai brought the last bread, everyone was ready to eat. Come, have a taste of my beef. It's one of the specialties here. In accordance with the principle of hospitality, Jiang Hai first forked a large piece of steak for Bernice and put it on her plate, then he got his own. After Bernice nodded to Jiang Hai, she cut a small piece of steak and stuffed it into her mouth. But as soon as she stuffed it in, her eyes suddenly lit up. Compared with Feng Yunqin and Ai Xiaoxi in China, Bernice is obviously a person who has eaten good food. She opened a research institute in the United States, so she is definitely considered to be in the upper class. For her, although premium-grade beef is also very luxurious, but it is not to the extent that she can't eat it. But now when she ate Jiang Hai's beef, she was a little surprised. Because this beef, although it is very bad, according to the highest standard abroad, the level of a 3-star chef in a Michelin restaurant, Jiang Hai is not even a half-star. No, he is not even a professional chef, but the taste of the beef surprised her. This beef tastes great. Is this the Japanese 5-grade Wagyu beef? Looking at the beef in front of her, Bernice said in surprise. Oh, this is not the Japanese Wagyu beef, but the beef in my manor. If you want to eat more, I have a lot here. Jiang Hai's favorite thing to do is to watch others praise his beef. This is the most satisfying time for him. Have a lot. This kind of beef is only produced in the middle of the brain and eye meat. Your rules here are not particularly big. Do you have a lot of cows? Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice asked curiously while stuffing beef into her mouth. Not too much, but I have a way to increase the output of this beef. Hearing Bernice's words, Jiang Hai didn't say too much, but he also revealed some of his specialties. Hearing this, Bernice thought for a moment and put down the knife. What's wrong? Not to your taste? Seeing her put down the knife, Jiang Hai asked strangely. No, it's delicious, but I treat you as a friend. I don't care what you do, but have you ever thought that if your beef is targeted by someone with bad intentions, when your wealth is also noticed by the authorities, how will you explain the source of the beef? Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice said with a serious look on her face. What do you mean? Hearing her words, Jiang Hai couldn't help but froze for a moment. He really didn't think about this problem before. In his opinion, the United States is a country that protects personal privacy. In his own manner, he can do whatever he wants, others can't control him, but he forgot that even if the United States is a country that protects privacy, but the authorities also have political power. If he makes a small fuss and no one pays attention to it, what if someone pays attention to it? Now he can make more than 1 billion yuan a year with cows. What if he can make billions when he can? Now he can already make a lot of premium-grade beef. What if the price is still rising? Jiang Hai didn't think about this before, but now that Bernice mentioned it, Jiang Hai subconsciously thought about it. It wasn't that Jiang Hai was worried about the future and only thought about the worst-case scenario. She had to take precautions against these things before they happened. It's literally what it means. Looking at Jiang Hai, Bernice picked up the knife again. She knew that Jiang Hai understood her words. Although Jiang Hai doesn't look very smart, he should be able to figure out what is going on. In this world, there is no absolute light and absolute justice. Moreover, when Jiang Hai's method of raising cattle attracted the attention of the United States top officials and they wanted to promote this method, if Jiang Hai didn't agree, then he would be a typical example of the opposite. For the interests of the majority, sacrificing the interests of the minority, this is the most solid principle in this world. Then what should we do? Hearing her words, this time it was Jiang Hai's turn to not eat. Originally, he still wanted to stay in his own weaving environment. In this environment, he wanted to live like this for the rest of his life, but now it seems a bit difficult. There are two ways, one is to treat the symptoms, the other is to treat the root cause. Looking at Jiang Hai in front of her, Bernice said slowly. What do you mean by treating the symptoms? Hearing that she really has a way, Jiang Hai was also a little surprised and asked curiously. Treating the cup is to find someone to rely on, but I don't think you will do this, And when this person loses power or changes, this umbrella will be useless, and it will cost a lot of money. Cutting another piece of beef and stuffing it into her mouth, Bernice said. What about the root cause? Indeed, according to Zhang Hai's character, he is unlikely to do this. If he really wants to do this, then there is no need for him to go abroad. In China, he is afraid that his gains will be inexplicably taken away by others, so he chose to go abroad. If it is the same abroad, then what is the difference between him and China? Come up with a scientific condition that can be convincing, preferably one that can't be replicated by others. Looking at the slightly panicked Zhang Hai, Bernice continued to eat the beef indifferently, but her words made Zhang Hai's depressed mood a little better in an instant. Chapter 381. While Zhang Hai was studying Bernice's words, on the other side of the ocean, in Zhang Hai's motherland, it was 8 o'clock in the morning. It was time to go to work. As the capital, every street in the capital was crowded at this time. To be honest, the speed of the traffic was much slower than the speed of bicycles. Most of the cars were firmly stuck on the road. They were listening to the radio, cursing the traffic, anxiously looking at their watches, praying that their boss would arrive later today. In front of a high-class office building, an obviously new Mercedes-Benz SLK quickly flashed out of the traffic in the distance. After a slight flaw, well, actually a flaw, almost hitting a roadside trash can, the car stopped in front of the office building. Then the door of the front passenger seat opened, and a fashionably dressed girl walked out from inside. You go up first, I'll park the car. Looking at the girl who got out of the car, another woman sitting in the driver's seat said to her with a smile. If Zhang Hai was here, he would definitely recognize these two people. The driver was Feng Yunchen, and the one sitting in the car was Ai Xueqi. Since returning from the United States, many days have passed unknowingly. These two girls were very busy these days. The next day, Feng Yunchen said goodbye to her former boss. Of course, her boss did not lack a woman like her. With the increasing pressure of the recent policies, he was happy for Feng Yunchen to leave, so he did not say anything. Then Feng Yunchen sold the house she was living in now. With the money from the sale of the house and the money Zhang Hai gave her, she bought a house on the edge of the third ring road in the capital. It was a very good neighborhood with 2 bedrooms. It cost her a total of nearly 7 million yuan. But there was still a lot of money left. Then she transferred the money back to her hometown and asked her family to buy her a 3-bedroom house in Bing City. There was a big difference between the housing prices in the capital and in Bing City. A 2-bedroom house in the capital cost 6 to 7 million yuan, but in Bing City, a 3-bedroom house in the third ring road only cost a little more than 1 million yuan. This was the difference. But after buying the new house, she did not live alone. The girl living with her was Ai Xueqi. According to her, although it was impossible for her and Zhang Hai to be together, she had to help Zhang Hai keep an eye on Ai Xueqi. After Ai Xueqi changed the money in her bank card into RMB, she transferred 3 million yuan to her hometown to pay back her family's money to treat the illness of her brother and parents. The rest of the money was enough for her family to buy a big house in the county. After receiving the money, Ai Xueqi's family cried because they vaguely knew that Ai Xueqi's money didn't come from a legitimate source. In the end, it was Feng Yunchen who spoke up for Ai Xueqi, saying that she found a rich boyfriend and lent the money to her. But after saying this, Ai Xueqi's parents always wanted to see Zhang Hai. When Zhang Hai went back, he made a big fuss. Of course, this was a story in the future. At least now, it was settled temporarily. In addition to these things, Ai Xueqi and Feng Yunchen also had the intention to suppress the company. Feng Yunchen was not a kind person, and this time, she supported Ai Xueqi, which made her even more unfriendly. Especially the fat pig manager who originally had some feelings for Ai Xueqi. After knowing that Ai Xueqi and Feng Yunchen had found a big backer together, he became honest. At least on the surface, the people in the company did not dare to show off to them. As for the photos they took, in order to avoid Zhang Hai's jealousy, they were strictly covered up. But even so, the two's delicate faces caused a sensation on the internet. On a goddess website for otakus, Feng Yunchen, who was originally in the top 10, even rushed to the top 3. Ai Xueqi, with her young capital, also rushed to the top 3, and even took the first place for a few days. The two girls became a lot more popular in an instant. Sure enough, in the eyes of these otakus, 13 grid abroad was much better than in China. Especially the style they showed in the photos, it was really fascinating. Okay, Sister Chen, what do you want to drink? Hearing what Feng Yunchen said to her, Ai Xiaoxi also chuckled, then took her donkey brand bag and asked her with a chuckle. The bag in her hand was given to her by Zhang Hai. The donkey brand precious leather series, sold in China, is worth 350,000 renminbi. Sold abroad, this thing is also worth 30,000 US dollars, nearly 200,000 renminbi. She has to admit that it is really expensive. But no matter where she goes with this bag, it is not an exaggeration to say that it is the center of attention. Those who are knowledgeable know that this thing is very expensive. Iced coffee. Hearing Ai Xiaoxi's words, Feng Yunchen also smiled. She has to admit that Ai Xiaoxi's attitude is really good. If she was a man, she would also like her. After saying a sentence, she started the engine and went to the underground parking lot. As for Ai Xiaoxi, she walked into the office building in front of her. In the Starbucks on the first floor, she ordered 2 cups of coffee. While waiting, a figure came to her. Xiaoxi. Hearing someone call her from behind, Ai Xiaoxi turned her head curiously. When she saw the person, her pupils couldn't help but tremble, but it only took a second to return to normal. It's you, what a coincidence. Looking at the man standing in front of her, Ai Xiaoxi said very plainly. Coincidence? Heh, a coincidence is over? In order to see you, I have been waiting here for 3 days. Hearing Ai Xiaoxi's words, the man's body couldn't help but tremble. Then he said to Ai Xiaoxi with a serious face. Oh, why are you looking for me in such a hurry? Hearing his words, Ai Xiaoxi nodded and continued to ask. Listening to the conversation between strangers, the man really felt his heart bleeding. We have reached the point where I have to look for you for something? Looking at Ai Xiaoxi in front of him, the man said with a trembling voice. It was hard for him to imagine that the woman in front of him was once his true love. No, you misunderstood me. What I mean is, don't look for me if you have something in the future. My boyfriend will not be happy if he knows. Looking at the man in front of her, Ai Xiaoxi said very plainly. Snow. Flowers fluttered in the wind, the north wind whistled, heaven and earth, a vast expanse. Just as Ai Xiaoxi's voice fell, the song playing in the shop next door happened to be playing. The man looked as if he had been struck by lightning. His face was filled with disbelief, regret, and helplessness. Your boyfriend? Isn't I your boyfriend? You have other boyfriends? Looking at Ai Xiaoxi in front of him, the man shouted crazily. Hearing his words, Ai Xiaoxi looked at him very plainly. This man was called Yu Hongji. He was Ai Xiaoxi's boyfriend in college. Of course, the two of them only held hands at most. Ever since her family got into trouble, this man didn't help her. Instead, he dragged her down. Since then, Ai Xiaoxi actually no longer regarded him as her boyfriend. This didn't mean that Ai Xiaoxi had to force this man to do anything for her. However, this man's family was in the capital. He had a house and a car. Although he wasn't very rich, he still had a few 100,000 yuan. When her family got into trouble, let alone a few 100,000 yuan, he didn't even take out 10,000 yuan. Even if she wanted to borrow money from his family, there was no way. According to Yu Hongji's mother, they weren't married yet. Why should she borrow money from him? Even if they were married, what obligation did they have to borrow money from him? Anyway, it meant that he didn't have any money. His money belonged to him. It had nothing to do with her. She understood this. However, a boyfriend who was unwilling to help her when she needed it the most, and who only wanted her to live according to his wishes, was better off not having him. Therefore, when she ignored this man's objection and entered this company, she had already called him and officially broke up with him. Now, seeing this man come looking for her again, Ai Xiaoxi's heart, which had already been captured by Zhang Hai, didn't have the slightest ripple. Sorry, you can only be considered my ex-boyfriend now. Don't destroy the last bit of your existence in my heart. Thank you. Looking at Yu Hongji, who was about to go crazy, Ai Xiaoxi's heart was very calm as she said faintly, Miss, your coffee is ready. At this moment, the waiter handed over 2 cups of packaged coffee. Thank you. After taking the coffee, Ai Xiaoxi calmly walked out. However, Yu Hongji grabbed her arm. At this moment, Jiang Hai didn't have any informants in the capital. Naturally, he didn't know what was going on. At this moment, he was sitting on the sofa and looking at Bernice. Earlier at the dinner table, Bernice talked about Jiang Hai's cow and whether or not they needed to find an excuse. Jiang Hai also fell into deep thought. Originally, he thought that the oil futures he had in the United States would be the best amulet. After all, the real political forces in the United States were the major families and plutocrats. The most famous ones were the Rockefellers and the J.P. Morgan Chase. These plutocrats were very interested in oil. As long as someone threatened him, Jiang Hai could use these things to get through safely. However, he didn't think about what he would do if the people who were interested in his manor were the United States government. If other people were interested in Jiang Hai's manor, it was nothing more than wanting to own it. That way, the plutocrats would be able to use it. However, what if the United States government asked Jiang Hai to disclose the reason for raising the cow? What would Jiang Hai do? If Jiang Hai didn't agree to disclose the reason, they would force a team of experts to dissect Jiang Hai's cow. What would he do then? Or directly imprison Jiang Hai and watch him raise cattle? Or torture him to extract a confession? What should he do? It wasn't that Jiang Hai's heart was too dark. When he heard Bernice's words, he couldn't help but gradually walk in the direction of darkness. Chapter 382. Ah, who is special? Who is special? What should I do? Is it a dead knot? Patting his forehead, Jiang Hai looked at the chandelier on the ceiling and said with some speechlessness, "In fact, it's quite easy to solve. You just have to announce how to raise cattle." Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice, who was sitting next to him, glanced at him and said indifferently, "It can be seen that she really doesn't care much about these things." In Bernice's view, if Jiang Hai really has any secret recipe, and if the UA government wants it, then it will be announced. But Jiang Hai listened to her words, and the expression on his face was like a secret. The problem is that it can't be announced. Looking at Bernice helplessly, Jiang Hai whispered in a low voice, "If it's the same as your treatment method, it can't be announced, then you can find a way to divert attention. For example, you can set up a research lab yourself, and then study why your cattle mutated, don't you know that? When the time comes, if the higher-up sends someone to investigate, just let them investigate. You are so cooperative, they won't bother you for the sake of influence." Looking at Jiang Hai, who seemed to have a headache, Bernice speechlessly looked at him and said, "This is what you said, the way to cure the root cause?" Hearing her words, Jiang Hai was stunned at first, then his eyes suddenly lit up. "Yes, if I don't say it all the time, those people will definitely think that I have some secret recipe, but if I don't tell them, it will be easy to mess up. But if I also make it clear and tell them that I don't know, and if anyone is interested, they can come and study it, then it will be easier. After all, the UA government still protects privacy on the surface." Now it's not that Jiang Hai doesn't want to disclose the secret recipe, but because Jiang Hai doesn't know it, then it's much easier, at least they are unlikely to deal with Jiang Hai in a tough way. This is also a cure, but it may be a little troublesome because a research institute is very expensive. Hearing Jiang Hai's words, Bernice still said calmly, "She was only responsible for coming up with ideas. No, the cost of the research institute is not small, but this may also be a way to make money." After listening to her words, Jiang Hai shook his head. If it was about these crooked ideas, he might not be able to do it. But when it came to making money, Jiang Hai's brain turned very quickly. The biggest purpose of this research institute was to hide Jiang Hai's bulls and remove Jiang Hai himself. At that time, these people would at most discover that Jiang Hai's pasture was particularly good. That was all. No one would suspect Jiang Hai. However, in addition to getting himself out of trouble, Jiang Hai can also use this research institute to make money. For example, if there were tourists, they could visit the research institute. This was also a tourist attraction. Secondly, the research institute could also help him raise cattle more scientifically and distribute new cattle breeds. All in all, although this thing requires a lot of money, it is very beneficial to Jiang Hai. Do you know anyone who is involved in biology? Find someone to help me open a research institute. Looking at Bernice, Jiang Hai said seriously, "Don't even think about the people I know. They are all researchers. Even if your cattle are expensive, they won't come because they will feel insulted.
You can only choose the person you want. Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai couldn't help but be speechless. Indeed, if you ask a doctor who treats people to treat dogs, he will feel insulted. Even treating dogs is like this, let alone studying cattle. Even in the United States, cattle have a high status, but they won't attract people. By the way, where does Xanthi live? I will go and play with her tomorrow. Looking at Zhang Hai's sad face, Bernice said slowly. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai also casually said the location of Xanthi's house. You even know her house. It seems that you really have something going on. By the way, how did you meet Xanthi? Hearing that Zhang Hai could name Xanthi Clive's house number without even thinking about it, Bernice couldn't help but be a little curious. At first, it was because the town's elementary school collapsed due to heavy snow. Then I was also a member of Winthrop Town, so I donated some money. Then I officially met Xanthi. Then she heard that I had never been to Boston, so she took the initiative to be my guide, and then... By the way, I think I know where to find people who study cattle. Hearing Bernice's words, Zhang Hai also recalled and said. His meeting with Xanthi was really a bit dramatic. But halfway through, he suddenly smashed his fist. He remembered where to find people who study cattle. Ah, you know? Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice looked at him strangely. I have to thank you for this. Patting her on the shoulder, Zhang Hai quickly ran upstairs to his room. He has to hurry up and check. If he remembers correctly, those researchers should be in Boston. Just as Zhang Hai was gratified in his heart and found a solution, the atmosphere in the coffee shop in the capital was a bit tense. Do you like money that much? For the sake of money, you sold your body and even your soul. Do you have any shame? I came to find you and you said this? You smelly bitch. How could I be so blind to fall in love with a green tea like you? Seeing that Ai Xiaoxi was about to leave, Yu Hongji finally couldn't help but shout loudly. Hearing his shout, not only the people in the coffee shop, but also the people who work here, all looked over. As for Ai Xiaoxi, the people here have actually heard about her. She is young, beautiful, and energetic. The people who work in this building usually have a good impression of her. Of course, this refers to the men. Men are the most loyal people in the world. From the age of 18 to the age of 80, they all like women in their early 20s. They are young, beautiful, and have a good figure. This will not change for the rest of their lives. Unlike women, who often change their minds, regardless of age, and like different people. It is not an exaggeration to say that a woman like Ai Xiaoxi is the public enemy here. Now that they see her make a fool of herself, the men here are very excited, and the women are also very excited. They can't wait to see her make a fool of herself. Feeling the eyes of the people around her, Ai Xiaoxi, who was still pretending to be calm, began to become anxious. You let go. I'm not your girlfriend anymore. I don't need you to care about my business. Looking at the man, Ai Xiaoxi said with disgust. She has long known that this man may come to pester her, but she didn't expect this guy to be so shameless. Yes, I don't need to care about you. There are plenty of people who will care about you. Whether they tell you to kneel, you don't dare to stand. Whether they tell you to use your mouth, you don't dare to use your hands. When you were with me, you pretended to be a saintess. You would hesitate for a long time just to hold my hand. Now you've been out for less than 3 months, and you've become so arrogant. Are you willing to be a slave of those rich people? Do you want money? Come on, I have money too. How many times do you want? Come on. Seeing more and more people gathering and seeing Ai Xiaoxi struggling, Yu Hongji completely lost his mind and shouted loudly. You bastard! Go away! Feeling Yu Hongji's madness, Ai Xiaoxi stepped forward and stepped on Yu Hongji's foot. Although Yu Hongji was in great pain, he didn't let go of her. Instead, he raised his hand and slapped her. You bitch! How dare you step on me? I'll beat you to death! Just as the slap was about to land on Ai Xiaoxi's face, a figure suddenly flashed from afar. When Ai Xiaoxi opened her eyes, she found that Yu Hongji, who was still holding on to her, had been kicked far away. At this moment, there were 2 big men holding him down on both sides. No matter how crazy he was, it was difficult for him to move. Seeing this scene, Ai Xiaoxi subconsciously took a step back. However, when she took a step back, someone pushed her, stopping her in her tracks. At the same time, she was startled.
She turned around in surprise and found a woman who was about the same height as her, older than her, and very beautiful. She was wearing an office lady's suit and had an extremely strong aura standing behind her. "You're AI Xueqi? Where's Feng Yunchen?" Seeing AI Xiaoxi's panicked gaze, the woman glanced at her indifferently. She didn't say any nonsense and directly asked her, Sister Chen. She didn't come. Do you need something from her?" Looking at this woman, AI Xiaoxi subconsciously lied. She felt that this woman's aura was really strong. She didn't know if Sister Chen had offended this person, but it seemed that if she had really offended this person, then it would be really troublesome. After all, she was a person who brought bodyguards with her when she went out. Xiaoxi. But unfortunately, sometimes people are so slow. As soon as her voice fell, Feng Yunchen had already run over. Just now, she had just parked the car and heard that there was a fight upstairs, and the opponent was AI Xiaoxi. She didn't have time to wait for the elevator, but directly took off her high heels and ran all the way up. But when she ran into the coffee shop, she was stunned, because she did know the woman standing in front of AI Xiaoxi. "Hello, we meet again. I heard that you went to Zhang Hai's place." "Oh, and her. It seems that you have made up your mind. Do you want to come and talk to me?" Turning her head, looking at Feng Yunchen, this woman with a strong aura said lightly, "Can I say no?" Looking at this woman, Feng Yunchen slowly put down the shoes inside. Although her words were still a little stiff and a little arrogant, it could be seen from her face that she had already accepted her fate, that she was already terrified. "Of course not. Come, pack your things. You go and tell their boss. Let's go, I'll treat you to beef. I think you must miss the taste, right?" With a chuckle, the woman waved her hand faintly. Then, someone beside her went upstairs. Feng Yunchen and AI Xiaoxi looked at each other, put on their shoes, and followed her out. Chapter 383. The person who came to look for Feng Yunchen and AI Xiaoxi was naturally no one else but Qili. After she left the office building with Feng Yunchen and AI Xiaoxi, there was already a Rolls-Royce parked outside the door. This car was the same model as Zhang Hai's car in the United States. Even the color was the same. It was specially bought by Qili after she came back from the United States. After getting in the car, the three of them did not say a word in the car. They rushed to the place that Qili had booked. Looking at Qili sitting there, Feng Yunchen looked very calm on the surface, but in fact, her heart was already thumping. After all, in a sense, she was the mistress, and Qili was the main wife. When the mistress saw the main wife, there were not many who dared to be arrogant. As for AI Xiaoxi, from her face to her heart, she was quite uneasy. Sitting in the car, her 10 fingers were about to be twisted together. Looking at their performance, Qili saw it in her eyes and felt a little depressed in her heart. Now, she really wanted to go up, grab the hair of these 2B** cheese, and smash their heads together. Beating them up would not be enough to relieve her hatred. But the problem was that she knew that this was not possible. Otherwise, she would not be able to explain to Zhang Hai. Speaking of which, the relationship between Qili and Zhang Hai was really a bit complicated. It seemed that every time the plot could not progress, she would come out to save the scene. She was really a very selfless person. Cough, of course, these were all digressions. In fact, when Feng Yunchen and AI Xiaoxi went to Zhang Hai's manor, she already knew. Because she had deliberately arranged an informant near Zhang Hai's manor. In fact, it was not quite right to call it an informant, because this informant's main responsibility was to protect this area. Yes, her informant was a police officer. Now that Zhang Hai had invested in Winthrop's tourism development, in the eyes of the Winthrop people, Zhang Hai was the most important person. Of course, in the past, he was also the most important taxpayer. Therefore, the police cars outside Zhang Hai's manor would come every few minutes. Even though the distance was far, it did not dissuade the government from protecting Zhang Hai's assets. At this time, Qili sent someone to ask the police to help watch Zhang Hai to see if there were any outsiders. It was understandable. Therefore, when Feng Yunchen and AI Xiaoxi entered Zhang Hai's manor for the first time, she already knew about it. After that, she even hired a private investigator to take some photos back. However, after the photos were taken, she didn't know what to do next. Normally, if a wife caught her cheating husband, these photos would be the evidence. Even if she didn't divorce him, she would still give him a warning. But now the relationship between Jiang Hai and Qi Li was a little subtle. If she wanted a divorce, Jiang Hai would be happy. If she wanted to warn Jiang Hai, it would be useless because Jiang Hai would be happy to divorce her. Even if he had to give her half of his manor, Jiang Hai wouldn't care. Because with his ability and wealth, he could build a new manor like this wherever he went after the divorce. Therefore, the relationship between Qi Li and Jiang Hai was getting more and more subtle. In fact, from the beginning, Qi Li didn't pay too much attention to Jiang Hai. Because in the beginning, Jiang Hai really seemed to be a little useless to her. The relationship between the two of them was just a relationship of money. But she didn't know when it started, but in her eyes, Jiang Hai, who didn't seem to be very capable, suddenly became like a star in the sky, shining brightly in an instant. Excellent men are extremely attractive to women. It's like you have a toy. When you don't play with it, you forget about it. But suddenly, there are a lot of people, even if they have to spend a lot of money to get the toy. You have no choice but to face it. In Qi Li's eyes, Jiang Hai may be that toy. After going to Jiang Hai's manor, Qi Li also had some interactions with him. Most importantly, she became more and more curious about Jiang Hai and found more and more good things about Jiang Hai. He was indifferent, which was a double-edged sword. In other people's eyes, he had no ambition, but in Qi Li's eyes, he was a very good harbor. However, even if his temperament was indifferent, his ability to make money was much stronger than his own. He didn't know about other things, but just the amount of money he had earned in the past few months was enough to catch up with the money his company had earned in the past few decades. He was rich, had a good temperament, and had a good figure. Most importantly, he dared to take responsibility and could give Qi Li an indescribable sense of security. She didn't know when Jiang Hai had become very manly, especially in the face of the mountain lion attack. That kind of sense of security could only be seen in her father's body when she was young. It was also because of that night that Qi Li's feelings for Jiang Hai gradually came. Sometimes in the dead of night, she would think about him. Qi Li didn't know when Jiang Hai had become very manly. If she had faced this relationship earlier, would the ending have been different? If she were in Winthrop now and lived with Jiang Hai, would her life be very beautiful? Of course, these were just thoughts. It wasn't that easy. Now, in public, she and Jiang Hai were business partners. In private, she still had some inexplicable feelings for Jiang Hai. That was why she held back her anger and looked at the two love rivals in front of her. The car soon arrived at the destination. It was one of the restaurants Qi Li was renovating. After getting out of the car, Qi Li led them into the empty restaurant. Now that the restaurant's renovation was completed, the smell was still in the air. Although the ingredients were the best, it was always good to be careful. Therefore, she planned to dry it for another month before opening it. But now, the people in the restaurant were all ready and were getting used to their positions. Because the restaurant's main dish was Jiang Hai's beef, everything was built according to the requirements of a Western restaurant. At first glance, it made people feel that 13 spaces were very high. Under normal circumstances, this restaurant wouldn't serve ordinary customers. At least, people who weren't properly dressed wouldn't be allowed to enter. Of course, those who pretended to be weak were depressed. Seeing Qi Li's arrival, everyone in the restaurant was busy with their own business. However, when Qi Li passed by, they would respectfully bow to show their respect, but they wouldn't disturb her work. This was also Qi Li's request. She didn't need to do that. Well, her idea was different from Jiang Hai's and other people's. If she didn't do that, then what was the point of having the waiters bow? No matter what Qi Li thought, the three of them walked to a table in the middle of the hall. The steak in Qi Li's restaurant was cooked on the spot. In addition to steak, the restaurant also sold teppanyaki. Customers could gather here and watch the chef cook while they ate. She had to admit that it was very effective. When Qi Li walked over, a chef was already ready. Although they were eating teppanyaki, the chef wasn't a Japanese, but a French. Actually, teppanyaki was originally invented by the Spanish in the 15th or 16th century. At that time, Spain was the most powerful country in the world, and even the United Kingdom was inferior to it. This way of eating was invented by them, but it was indeed carried forward by the Japanese later. In terms of eating teppanyaki, European chefs were indeed not as good as Japanese chefs, but considering that the main dish here was steak, It was a good choice to hire a French chef. When he saw Xueqi and the others coming over, the handsome French chef who looked to be in his 30s showed a confident smile and said a string of French to the three women. Then, before the three women understood, he used his half-baked Chinese to translate.
Hello, ladies. My dear Chi, I've prepared everything. You can have a look at my skills.
The French chef said while winking at Xueqi. Seeing this scene, Xueqi didn't react, but Feng Yunchen frowned slightly, but she didn't say anything.
The three of them sat there.
Next, it was time for the French chef to show off his skills. One had to admit that the French chef that Xueqi found was really good. He was a 2-star Michelin chef. As soon as the dishes were cooked, the aroma drifted over. Then, he divided the dishes into 3 portions and sent them to the 3 women by the waiter. However, the 3 portions didn't seem to be different from each other. Although the 3 portions looked different, those who had studied them would know that Lu Li's portion was the best. It was a pity that Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi didn't study it. They ate some of the teppanyaki and to be honest, the taste was good, but the ingredients were ordinary, especially after they ate at Zhang Hai's place. Fortunately, the steak at the back was from Zhang Hai's place. It was specially brought back by Xueqi. Now that they ate it, the taste was indeed quite good. Although it was morning, the 3 women ate with relish. As for the French chef, after he finished cooking, he didn't retreat to the kitchen. Instead, he stood there and looked at Xueqi with a pair of gentle eyes. Unfortunately, Xueqi didn't even bother to tease him. We're almost done eating. If you have anything to say, just say it, or we'll have to go back to work. Seeing that there wasn't much beef left on the plate, Feng Yunchen finally mustered up the courage and said to Xueqi, "Words? Do you think my words are useful? If I told you to stay away from Zhang Hai, would you do it?" Xueqi picked up a piece of steak and slowly put it into her mouth, then said somewhat speechlessly, "Actually, this doesn't depend on us, it depends on him." Hearing Xueqi's words, Feng Yunchen hesitated for a moment and said, "Yes, so today I just came over to treat you to a meal. Consider it as me, your first wife, taking advantage of you. But then again, Feng Yunchen, you can just go to Zhang Hai yourself. Why did you bring another one? Aren't you afraid that what you get will be divided?" Xueqi gently tapped the table with her finger and said with a faint smile. Hearing her words, Feng Yunchen also gently wiped the corner of her mouth and smiled. Chapter 384. Looking at Xueqi in front of her, Feng Yunchen was not in a hurry, and there was no need to panic now. After wiping her mouth, she deliberately took a sip of her drink and said slowly, "I have a congenital defect, so I can't be the last one to stand next to Zhang Hai, but if the last one to stand next to Zhang Hai is you, then I will be in a passive position, so I want to take advantage of this opportunity to get reinforcements, that's all. Besides, with Zhang Hai's financial resources and ability in that aspect, it is not a problem to satisfy the 2 of us. To be honest, I can't take it. I think you should understand." Listening to Feng Yunchen's words, even Xueqi's face turned red unconsciously. She didn't think of anything shameful, but because, although she and Zhang Hai were husband and wife in name, they didn't do that kind of thing. Now listening to the mistress talking about this in front of her, she was really embarrassed and anxious. Looking at her appearance, Feng Yunchen and Ai Xiaoxi naturally didn't think about it, but they thought that she would be shy? "Forget it, I can't talk to you. Before the matter between me and Zhang Hai is resolved, I will protect your safety in the capital. Remember, you are safe now because of Zhang Hai. If one day Zhang Hai also abandons you, then you don't need to stay here anymore." Shaking her head, Xueqi shook the thoughts in her mind and said faintly, "Of course we are also very clear about this, so I even abandoned the big boss behind me. That's sincere enough, right? Xiaoxi, let's go, it's time to go to work." Hearing Xueqi's words, Feng Yunchen also stood up and walked out with a smile. She knew that when she reached Xueqi's level, she would do what she said. If she said that she and Ai Xiaoxi were safe, then they were really safe. Of course, the premise was that they didn't seek death and do something to make Zhang Hai unhappy. At that time, no one could save them. With Xueqi's character, the possibility of adding insult to injury was almost 1,000%. Seeing that Feng Yunchen was about to leave, Ai Xiaoxi also stood up immediately, nodded to Xueqi, and left immediately. After all, She was a person who just walked out of school, and looking at Xueqi, she was the most stressed. Looking at the two leaving, Xueqi didn't move, but continued to sit there and drink. Oh, by the way, let me remind you, Zhang Hai is very narrow-minded and sensitive. For people like us who are destined to be unable to stand by his side, he will remind us to be careful. You are the legal wife, so naturally, you should also pay attention to the little bees around you. If one day you get shot, then you and Zhang Hai are completely finished. Seeing that Feng Yunqin and Ai Xiaoxi were about to walk out of the restaurant, Feng Yunqin suddenly stopped and looked at the chef with some ridicule. After saying something to Xueqi, she turned around and left. Although they didn't know how to judge whether the teppanyaki meat was good or not, they weren't blind. But they were not blind. That man had been staring at Xueqi just now. Not to mention that it was just a feeling of admiration for the boss. They would not believe it. How could a French man be any good? Hearing what Feng Yunqin said, Xueqi drank the drink in front of her in one gulp. Now she really wanted to find a man to anger Zhang Hai. But just like what Feng Yunqin said, Zhang Hai was a sensitive and narrow-minded person. If he knew that she found a boyfriend, no matter if this boyfriend was real or fake, he would directly cut off contact with her. He was such a heartless person, so Xueqi could only tolerate him outside while managing herself. But fortunately, she was not as helpless and cold as before. Because she knew that if something happened to her, she could rely on the shoulder in the United States. So after Feng Yunqin finished speaking, she looked at the person in front of her. You are fired. After saying this to the handsome French guy, Xueqi got up and left. Me? Outside? Hearing Xueqi's words, the handsome French guy, who originally felt good and wanted to hug the beauty, instantly became Spartan. He came here to work first because the money here was really a lot, and second it was for Xueqi. She was rich, beautiful, had a good figure, and was also a strong woman. If such a woman was in his hands, even if he didn't get married, he wouldn't have to work for a lifetime. But he didn't expect that because of a light sentence, he would lose his job. Xueqi was too lazy to explain anything to him. She directly said, because my husband doesn't like it. Then she turned and left. Feng Yunqin and Ai Xiaoxi had to go to work, and she also had to go to work. The Qi family was still the most important in her heart. After a busy day, the imperial capital slowly went into the evening, and on the other side of the world in the United States, it was already morning. When Zhang Hai stretched and got out of bed, it was already past 7 o'clock. He got up and went to the bathroom to wash his face and brush his teeth. Then he changed into sportswear and went out for a run. However, when Zhang Hai went out, he found that Bernice had already woken up. At this time, she was wearing a white traditional Chinese practice suit. She was standing there practicing boxing, but it was different from the Tai Chi that Zhang Hai had seen in the past. The old man and old woman in the park who practiced Tai Chi was not the same. This woman's boxing was vigorous and vigorous. Seeing that she was still punching hard, Zhang Hai didn't say much, but started running directly. Half an hour later, when Zhang Hai came back, the woman had already finished playing. At this time, she was relaxing her muscles. Finished. Your punching technique is really beautiful. Seeing Bernice, Zhang Hai said with a smile. This was taught to me by my mother. Well, an uncle. This is authentic Bajiquan, but I have never used this thing in a real fight. It is probably just for show. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice shook her head and said with a serious face. Bajiquan? I have heard of this before. In literature, there is Tai Chi to calm the world, and in martial arts, there is Bajiquan to shake the world. This is Bajiquan, it is really good. Although Zhang Hai is not a boxing enthusiast, when he learned fighting skills from Belle, he went online. He had also looked it up on the internet. In terms of attack power, the Ba Ji Kung Fu should be at the top, followed by the Xingyi Kung Fu, the 5 forms, and the 8 trigrams. Of course, there was no such thing as the strongest martial arts in the world, only the strongest person. What kind of person uses what kind of Kung Fu, and what kind of effect it has is uncertain. Zhang Hai is a layman, so he won't comment. Hearing Zhang Hai's words, Bernice glanced at him and said, Have you finished your work at the Research Institute? Are you in a good mood? Well, there is some progress. After breakfast, I will go there. Hearing her words, Zhang Hai also nodded, and his mood became better for no reason. Indeed, He has the right to be happy because his biggest crisis has been solved. Seeing that Jiang Hai seemed to have found a way, Bernice didn't care. After chatting for a while, the two returned to their respective rooms and took a shower. After washing off the sweat on his body, Jiang Hai went downstairs and began to prepare breakfast. It has to be said that life is always the best teacher. Thinking back, Jiang Hai didn't even know if the noodles were cooked, let alone cooking, but now in order not to trouble others, he has gradually begun to cook. Of course, Delina and Marian weren't young anymore. These two girls would sometimes cook, but to be honest, Jiang Hai didn't know if these two girls had a problem with their taste buds, but they especially liked to eat sour and spicy food. When cooking, they would also use a lot of ketchup and chili. This was what made Jiang Hai speechless. It was fine to eat them once in a while, but he couldn't bear to eat them every day. Therefore, as long as he had time, Jiang Hai would come to cook. Of course, cleaning up was their job. Jiang Hai didn't eat something as greasy as steak in the morning. Of course, there was still beef sausages. These beef sausages were made by Mrs. Philemon in the manor. Generally speaking, after removing the main beef, there would be a lot of minced meat left, such as the neck and some connecting parts of the meat. Although this beef could reach the standard if sold outside, Jiang Hai really didn't want to eat beef of this grade. They couldn't even finish the best beef, so what was the point of eating this beef? Therefore, these beef sausages were made into beef sausages. Generally speaking, beef sausages wouldn't be made with the lowest grade of beef that was canned. But it was also mainstream to use minced beef. It was good enough to use usable beef. It was really a waste to use standard beef sausages. But to be honest, it tasted pretty good. He fried 4 sausages, 4 eggs, cooked oatmeal, and a bowl of fruit and vegetable salad. As for milk and coffee, Jiang Hai had them all. He didn't drink coffee, so his coffee was canned. Although it wasn't as good as freshly made coffee, it was at least better than instant coffee. The 4 of them ate a delicious breakfast together and rested for a while. It was already past 9 in the morning. Bernice also had a driver's license, so Jiang Hai gave her the key to his Ford E350 and told her to do as she saw fit. Then, he drove his battle shield towards the distant Boston. A strange man. Looking at Jiang Hai's car driving away, Bernice couldn't help but curl her lips. In fact, she had another identity that Jiang Hai didn't know. She came here this time to observe Jiang Hai. But from yesterday afternoon and evening, this Jiang Hai was really quite interesting, but she didn't know what would happen in the future. Watching Jiang Hai's car leave her sight, Bernice didn't say much. She took the key and started the engine. She drove in the direction of the town. Today, she was going to see one of her few friends, Xueqi Clive. As for Jiang Hai, he drove all the way to Boston. He didn't stop after passing through the city, but went directly to Boston University. This time, the researcher he was looking for was at Boston University. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.